on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning to you. Welcome to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, as you well know, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Lots, as always, to talk about to you today. It's just past coming up, well, it's just past at 3 minutes past 10 o'clock. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it is great to have your company. If you miss anything from the show, you have to pop out, I don't know, you've got job, life, that sort of thing. You can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. You can hit subscribe, and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to discuss that set of peace talks that apparently Donald Trump has been having with a big figure in Iran. No one knows who that figure is, and there was a claim that it was the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament, except he said it wasn't him. Are there going to be talks? Have they happened already? Will anything come out of this? Or is it all, as the Iranians say, fake news? Plus, Keir Starmer yesterday, that liaison committee, getting a little bit antsy. Don't like being asked questions. Weird for a politician in a democracy, but he's refusing to set a timeline for increasing defence spending to 3% of GDP. Spent a lot of time there, actually just basically blaming the Tories for their failures on increasing defence spending, and he's quite right about that. But I do think 11 days' notice about that Iran conflict might have been useful for getting, I don't know, at least one of our ships in place. We're also going to be talking about Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary. She said that anti-Semitism is on the rise in Britain after that firebomb attack on 4 Jewish volunteer ambulances yesterday. I have to say, the cesspit of horror of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories online on X and elsewhere over the last 24 hours has been, I think we've reached new depths. We really have. In this country. Absolutely horrified by that. But there's now some investigation by the counter-terrorism police into whether or not this was actually a terror attack orchestrated by Iran. They've done it before. They're going to do it again. Also going to be talking more about energy prices. Rachel Reeves at about 12:30 today is going to be in the House of Commons. She's going to be announcing sort of the broad outlines, but no specifics about what help there might be for households in the event of this energy price shock, which will impact everything we buy, everything we do, and it's going to have a huge impact on, particularly on drivers. She's going to announce we are expected energy help, particularly for heating bills and electricity bills, is going to be basically targeted at the poor rather than everybody, as Liz Truss did, to the tune of, 40 billion in the end. Figures vary. But Ed Miliband, meanwhile, has been accused of net zero fanaticism. That is something we don't know on this show, making Britain poorer and weaker by sticking to his guns that apparently if we drill for North Sea oil and gas, we won't see any benefit from it, despite the fact that, we would. But, don't let facts get in the way of your fanaticism, Ed. You never have before. I want to ask you to get in touch about, as you know, always anything you want to talk about. You get to set the rules on what you talk about. But in particular, how worried are you about the Iran war continuing? We don't know if it's going to be ending soon or not. And also about the impact on our safety here. That concern about missiles being able to come this far, if this was an Iranian attack on these Jewish community safety ambulances. And what about energy prices as well? The impact on our economy is likely to be big, whether the war continues or not, because of just simply those limitations on the sale and the transportation and the production of oil and liquefied natural gas in the Middle East in recent weeks. So tell us what you think and tell us why you're worried. Tell us why you're not worried. And if you want to get in touch about anything else we're talking about, please do as well. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls to charge at the national rate altogether now. Text +1, standard network rate message. Not joining in that, unhelpfully. It just spiked online, Tom Slater, just looking at me and sort of, what are you doing now, love?
Missed my cue, sorry.
I get that a lot. It's sort of like having my husband here. What's she going on about now? Tom, so much to talk about. So much to talk about. Let's start, though, with these Iran-US peace talks and whether they've happened or not, and whether they will happen and whether they'll be successful or not. Go.
So, yes, Schrodinger's peace talks. It's not entirely clear what's going on here. In classic Donald Trump style, he's trying to make it sound as if a deal is very much in the offing, that there's many points of agreement, which is not an easy conclusion to reach, given they're still throwing munitions at one another. It's clear that he's had one eye on the markets this entire time and probably feels like he's bitten off more than he can chew. The difficulty is with war is that you can't just unilaterally end it. In terms of if the hostilities are going to come to some sort of longer-term settlement, that requires the Iranians to be on board. That requires them to feel like they can't extract any more from continuing to fire upon American bases or Israel or what have you. And it's not entirely clear that that's within their interest at this point. So we'll see what happens. But all of this is very hard to get a grip on, not least because it's not even clear who they're talking to.
Well, indeed. But it was interesting. Starting the show yesterday with this expectation of this deadline at midnight last night, UK time, that they're going to start bombing these energy facilities and obliterating them, and the Iranians promising the same back to Arab states and to Israel. And you're talking into, I was saying on the show, we're not just talking about energy supplies and energy for those countries, and crucially energy production for the rest of the world. And bearing in mind there are some countries that completely rely on energy from whether it's liquefied natural gas or oil from the particular Middle East countries that were being threatened, but also the prospect of desalination plants basically being unable to function without energy plants, or just being bombed themselves. And that has always been a big risk in this, because between 60 and 90% of all water in the Middle East basically is produced from desalinated seawater. So again, I was saying yes, you're looking into societal breakdown within days. Sod your weeks and your months. Days at that point. We are, looking at a big crisis. There's a lot of talk about, Donald Trump's going to the Iranians saying fake news. I know, Do I trust things that Donald Trump says? I don't know if Donald Trump believes what he says half the time, to be honest with you. He contradicts himself within 5 minutes. He just says glib things, just wants the storyline, and then you're not quite sure. And when it's over really big stuff like this, frankly, it is worrying. It is a concern. It doesn't matter. You don't have to have Trump derangement syndrome to be concerned about that. And also whether or not he grasped the detail, whether he understood the risk of the economic warfare in terms of the Strait of Hormuz. But when he says that they're speaking to this big guy, the Iranian parliament leader, and that guy tweets, "No, you're not talking to me." I mean, are they doing it privately? They're doing it secretly, and he doesn't know. I mean, we just have no way of knowing. We're hearing reports that his golf buddy, property magnate, and apparently Middle East and Ukrainian, Russian and everywhere mediator, Steve Witkoff. The man does it all. He's heading to Pakistan for talks and again with Jared Kushner, who's actually I think a lot of people have got a lot more time for Jared Kushner in terms of his knowledge and his negotiating ability. Pakistan very much interested in they've got relations with the US and Iran, also relying entirely on the Middle East for their liquefied natural gas. I think we can only hope that there is going to be something that could lead to an off-ramp, but we've still seen strikes overnight on all sides.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's what's really hard to swear about all of this, because it's quite clear that America's aims going into it, to the extent that you can discern it, haven't really been met. It's also clear that in terms of Iran's position in all of this, I think it's always been fair to assume that the aim is to survive the war as much as possible. To survive is to win in this situation, because they could say that they stood down America and all the rest of it. So maybe there's an opening there, but it would feel like a climb down for Trump, even though everyone's looking at the oil and gas markets, even though everyone wants to avoid the kind of horrific economic outcomes that could be coming our way and would be much worse the longer this crisis continues. How Trump has any sort of leverage in this situation beyond just sheer firepower is a difficult part of the equation.
I mean, and again, if Iran, as we've discussed over the last few weeks, are basically fighting a completely different war because they're fighting an economic war and they know they've got that power. And in a midterm election year, they absolutely do. It's very interesting, the accusations of insider trading, that someone in the room with Donald Trump, when he decided to make this statement, write this long capital letters post on Truth Social, had 5 minutes advance warning. There's $1.5 billion put on, oil price rises, oil price falling, and it did. But there was fears the other day it could go over $200 a barrel. We are talking 1970s. You ain't seen nothing yet. Levels of economic pain at that point. Interesting, yesterday, Keir Starmer was attending the liaison committee, which is a group of MPs, the chairs of various select committees, and they give a variety of topics they're going to talk about for him to hone up on. He can't go, "Oh, I didn't know you were going to ask me about this." Main problem with these things, I think, there's quite a lot I need the Prime Minister to be doing right now. I'm not entirely sure that was the best use of his time, given how much was up in the air yesterday. But there we are. I'm in favour of Prime Ministers being questioned, but maybe we could have moved it by a day. I don't know. But he doesn't like answering questions at the best of times from anybody. He's very dismissive of anyone who asks him questions. He's very wooden. But he got a little bit antsy, I think that's the technical term, with Bernard Jenkins, a Tory MP, asking questions about failure to up defence spending and failure to basically boost our defences ready for this, and indeed have ships in place. We've got HMS Dragon has finally arrived in Cyprus. I mean, 3 weeks after the attack on RAF Akrotiri, and 2 weeks to get there. I mean, well done, everybody. But he basically blamed the last government. Look, and it's true. And the government before that, everyone has been cutting their defence spending. Austerity. To be fair, any Labour government in power in 2010 would have also cut defence spending. We know that in those austerity years. But given that the British government was given 11 days' notice, we now know 11 days' notice that there was going to be likely a conflict. And anyone just watching the news would go, "Oh, an awful lot of American aircraft carriers heading to the area. I wonder what they're doing or planning." It is extraordinary that he didn't get ships sent there. He didn't send back minesweepers to Bahrain and the like.
And also, it was more than 11 days' notice, we're being honest. I mean, this goes back to last summer and the 12-day war. This goes back to the build-up in the area, the armada, the likes of which the world has never seen, as Trump called it, when he amassed his warships in the Middle East. And it was obvious at some point something was going to happen. It was obvious that even if Britain rather didn't want to get involved, that our military assets and our people in the region would become a target. All of this was eminently foreseeable.
Yep.
So, of course, there are longer-term factors. Of course, there is historic and generational now underinvestment in the armed forces. But this is about decision-making, speed, swiftness, which clearly fall at the Prime Minister's door.
And
he
none of which he's good at.
No.
Doesn't like making decisions. He doesn't move fast. There's loads of reports now about just how he runs, a total lack of interest in just getting things done, and it's really
sort of by committee, it seems like.
Yeah.
As well. That was one thing that came out of Donald Trump and his exchange with Keir Starmer, which he's obviously been quite open about.
Consult my team.
Exactly. Just even the fact that he said
Prime
that
Minister
was quite telling. And all of the insider takes suggest the man who spends a lot of his time kind of slowly poring over detail, but doesn't seem to be able to recall any of it nor make any decisions at the end of it. And that's a big problem for him in general, writ large.
Absolutely. Probably just still busy looking for Morgan McSweeney's stolen iPhone. But there we are. Easy mistake to make. Let's also talk about, the Iranian. Again, all of this has so much. Virtually all the stories we're talking about over the last few weeks all are linked to the Iran war. People go, it's just something over there. It ain't. It's affecting us right now. But the arson attack on the Jewish ambulance sort of charity service in Golders Green, all the great and the good turned up there, didn't they? All the pioneers, everyone's gone along and everyone's wrung their hands and said how terrible it is. And the trouble is, when the government does that, and we've got the likes of the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood talking about anti-Semitism is on the rise, like, oh, no, really? Oh, I've noticed that. Talk about it every day. I get told off for talking about it every day. But there's now some talk that Iran could possibly be behind that attack. An Iran-backed group has claimed, without showing any evidence, that they on Telegram that they are behind this. But that certainly wouldn't be out of character. We've seen other similar attacks. It's sort of in the modus operandi for some of these Iranian groups. This is a concern, is it not? And I don't know if you've seen. I'm on X. It's the only social media I really mainly use. The conspiracy theories, the open, blatant anti-Semitism. They're not even pretending it's about Israel anymore. If I get sent one more picture of a man, with a hooked nose, really, it's just off the scale. I find it extraordinary. I'm a free speecher, but really, I wouldn't. I don't want someone sending pictures of of monkeys to black people. We don't find that acceptable, because it's obviously meant as a racist meme. And what is going on online is absolutely terrifying. Not as terrifying as what is going on in real life on the streets of London and Manchester and everywhere else. But they clearly have a relationship, don't they?
No, absolutely. And on the Iran piece of this quickly, I think this is a threat that we have really not taken seriously.
Yeah.
When the war kicked off, Keir Starmer said that there's been more than 20 Iran-linked plots which have been foiled over the past 2 years. We've seen attacks on the Jewish community, first and foremost, or
spying on them.
Those two arrests, those two charges which were brought this week against two Iranian nationals. Plots to target synagogues and Israeli embassy and so on and so forth. Also, people from the Iranian diaspora, dissidents and so on. And yet this has been ignored. It's something that we've seen gear up since October the 7th across Europe. In the past week, there were a string of attacks in the Netherlands and Belgium, which were claimed by this new Iran-linked Islamist group, which has been doing the rounds on the internet. So this is something which was clearly a threat, is clearly something that our kind of porous borders and taking our eye off the ball is allowed to happen. And yet now, once again, the Jewish community is paying the price for it. The fact that you have this kind of external and also to a certain extent internal homegrown anti-Semitic threat, and then to see that not taken seriously by the great and good is painful enough. But also to see this kind of Jew hatred bubbling up online in response to clear-cut instances of Jewish people being targeted, victimised, the rejection, it's a false flag operation. This is...
Oh, yeah, that was the first few responses, false flag.
And that's the lighter end of it, if we're honest, in terms of what you see online now. So just from all directions, there's tiny British Jewish communities. There's fewer Jews in Britain than there are Sikhs in Britain. This is a very small, embattled group of people. And the fact they've got that not only are they under the cosh, but there's so little solidarity with them is something which I think reveals a real sickness.
It's a really fascinating thing I saw on social media yesterday, which was a conversation with I think Gad Syed, a conversation he had with Joe Rogan, who's got a hugely influential podcast, hugely influential on the right, particularly. And he asked him how many Jews he thought there were in the world. How many Jewish people is in the world? And he said, I don't know. He goes, no, give me a rough guess. Give me a rough guess. And there's 8 billion population of the world. And he said, 1 billion. And then he said, OK, I'm going to be conservative. I'm going to say 500 million. OK. And the actual answer is 14 million. 14. There are only 14 million. And about half of those, well, just over half of those live in Israel. And that's it. And this idea that this cabal of a billion plus Jews are controlling the world. This is all just genuinely, I mean, it's terrifying nonsense. And here's something that's even more terrifying: is how many people just say no, we're just criticising the policy of Israel. I'm sorry, people who run a community ambulance service funded by the Jewish community, but available to all people, Jewish, any other faith or no faith in the area. I used to live in that area. I know it's available to everybody. The phone number is public and it's available. No one should have to need no one should ever need any sort of volunteer ambulance service. Our NHS should be good enough. But the idea that people that online, I mean, there must have been 1 million messages yesterday saying, oh, why do the Jews get their own ambulances? And then there's some pictures of some security, local security teams, again, funded by local people, in their yellow vests, your high vis, security. I go, oh, and now they've got their own police force. I mean, genuinely terrible. They're just trying to keep people safe because they're more likely to be under attack than the people who aren't Jews. It's really that simple. But there's also, I mean, I find it extraordinary that some of the stuff that's online is not. I report quite a lot of it, and no, not a problem. I mean, and a lot of it to me is so blatantly, obviously anti-Semitic. It would be a joke if it wasn't so sick. But we've even got an art exhibition. Kent police have ruled that art in an exhibition portraying, I mean, I understand most people wouldn't be aware of what anti-Semitic tropes were. I mean, the whole octopus, the squid thing, all that stuff. I didn't know about any of that stuff before sort of Jeremy Corbyn and his ilk were putting that stuff out. But I certainly knew about the whole blood libel, the idea that Jewish people eat babies. That is something that's been around since the Middle Ages. Okay, that started a long time ago. It was absolutely used by the Nazis in the 1930s. It's been used since. But basically, drawings at an art exhibition. This is drawings against genocide. Oh, because it's always the good people, isn't it? This is a drawings against genocide exhibition at a gallery in Margate in Kent. And it's got hundreds of very crudely drawn pictures. Let me just show you some of the images. These are actually from a Daily Mail tweet, because we're not allowed to show the actual direct images. But, I mean, these are images of clearly sort of satanic-y figures with blood eating babies. This is a less sophisticated. It's not anti-Semitic, apparently. It's not a crime. These are just less sophisticated images than Hitler used to justify killing an entire ethnic and religious group. I don't understand people who don't get what serious times we are in.
Yes, and I think part of the equation here is people aren't aware of these tropes when they see them. As you say,
because thankfully we haven't lived in a world where we've needed to be.
Yes, exactly. And I think it's one of those things we were talking about how small the British Jewish community is. Maybe a lot of people don't know any Jews, and therefore they're not as aware of these nefarious, age-old, ancient tropes, as you say. But this is something which comes up time and again. People dress this up as opposition to Israeli policy, or the occupation of Gaza, as they would call it.
Or the genocide that never happened.
The genocide that never happened. All these people running around furious about some things that have never happened. But time and again you see the same images, as you say, sort of devil horns, the blood libel, eating babies, the idea that the Jews or the Israelis, pick, the names are interchangeable, control world affairs, puppet masters, leading America as if it was a dog on a lead. All of these things just come up time and time again. It's just the age-old tropes dusted off and presented as something which is sophisticated about foreign policy. But this is so out there now. It's so kind of unashamed, unabashed. When you see people on the streets at these various, essentially sort of Islamist demonstrations that pose as being in favour of the Palestinians, people are almost kind of cocksure and self-confident. They know that they've been given licence on some level, and that's the thing that's most terrifying.
Kill all Jews worldwide is apparently not an unacceptable thing to say. So, again, the police, it's interesting, the Metropolitan Police Chief, Sir Mark Rowley, has been on, and he said, again, he, like all the politicians, he says all the right, I can actually, hear the hand-wringing as he says it, we need to stop this. No, but you don't stop it. And as I say, you never charge the guys shouting, we're going to rape your wives and daughters in plain broad daylight a few years ago. You never charge them. I mean, I'm sorry, if you don't charge people, if you don't arrest people, you don't prosecute people, then they think it's why do these people think it's okay to do this? Because you've basically said it is. We've got a march this weekend. This is called the Together Against the Far Right March, and they're really keen on this. And of course, the pro-Pally lot getting in, everyone's getting. And again, they always pretend they're against the far right. I mean, I'm opposed to the far right as well. Apparently, I am far right myself, but the far right ain't the problem, guys. The far right ain't the problem. You guys are the problem. You are the problem. This is the terrifying thing.
And that's one of the things about our time, is that we have seen a movement emerge in the country which is deeply anti-Semitic, which is authoritarian, which wants to crack down on any form of dissent, doesn't have a lot of time for women's rights and gay rights. Sounds pretty fascistic to me, but because it's wrapped under the banner of radical Islam and all the rest of it, the anti-fascists just sort of stare at their shoelaces. Actually, worse than that, they're often found on demonstrations with these people, turning a blind eye as they utter these blood libels and chant blood-curdling slogans about putting Zionists in the ground and so on and so forth. So that's one of the most despicable things, is that the very same people who've been running around in the past few years insisting we're on the road to a new 1930s because people voted for Brexit.
And see racism everywhere.
Yeah. We'll talk ad nauseum about why your woman from Little Mix shouldn't have cornrows or something, and yet don't care about people airing, protocols of the Elders of Zion stuff about the Jews. I mean, it's not just that it would be funny if it wasn't so serious. And it would be a blind spot, but it's not a blind spot. They walk shoulder to shoulder with these people on any other Saturday, any other demonstration. So I don't want to hear from them at a time like this.
I'm beginning to get I've been worried for a long time. I do think we're in 1930s territory, and I put on social media last night, it was a cesspit on social media yesterday. I just went, I'm signing off, I'm done. But my thing is, you can't be silent anymore. You just can't be silent anymore. You can't say, well, it's not my battle, it's not my issue, I don't live in an area with Jews, or I'm not Jewish myself. You just... It's not an option anymore. People come up to me all the time from the Jewish community and will say, oh, thank you so much for speaking out for us. And by the way, I don't get my 7,000 shekels. It's a load of abject, insulting nonsense. I speak about these things because it's the right thing to do, and it's because I feel strongly. I never say anything online or on social or on air that I don't actually completely and utterly believe. No one tells me what to say. No one pays me to say certain things. And I speak out, and people say thank you, and I always say the same thing back. Please, I'm so embarrassed and ashamed that you feel the need to thank me and that anyone needs to speak out on your behalf. But you know what? We do need to speak out on the behalf of people in this country who are just the big target right now. I would be speaking out for black people, for gay people, for Muslim people, for trans people, if they actually were being targeted in the same way. But they are not. We've had the lessons of history. If you've just done GCSE history, you should know what the lesson is. If you just watch the Discovery Channel, Nazis and sharks, that's all it is. You must have come across this issue before. You need to educate yourself if you don't know about this. But this is how it happens. This is how 6 million Jews were sent to the gas chamber. I'm not exaggerating. It started like this. This is the canary in the coal mine, and they don't just start with the Jews and end with the Jews. It carries on to everybody else. So I just think that everyone now, you need to wake up, you need to stop shutting up, you need to be speaking out. You see it online, you see it in person, you see it on the street, you hear a colleague saying it, a friend saying it in the pub. You need to say, no, that's anti-Semitic, that's unacceptable, you're wrong. You need to arm yourselves with some facts so you can argue against the nonsense about Israeli genocide and all of that. You need to start speaking out, because if you're not speaking out, if you're not actually challenging it, I'm afraid staying silent is being part of the problem. Okay? Don't say, oh, I think I'd be the sort of person who would have spoken out against Hitler in the 1930s. And if you're not doing it now, If you're not doing it now, then you are one of the people that would have stayed silent as they put Jews on the trains. And I'm sorry, that is the territory we are in. The people who are behind this growth, this conspiracy theories, this anti-Semitism, they want to kill everybody, not just in Israel, but all Jews around the world. And also their main aim, long term, is actually wiping out our democratic liberal values. We need to be alert to this. This stuff doesn't just happen overnight. It's creeping slowly. We are talking about the boiling frog scenario. The water is already getting pretty hot. Time for everyone to wake up and jump out of the pot. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
The Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royal tea from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the Royal Tea from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. 10:32 is the time. Let's get straight to your phone calls. 0344 499 1000. There's so many other topics I wanted to get to. Sorry, had a bit of a rant there, but I'm really getting very concerned. We are going to be talking a little bit later about that report issued by headed by Tony Sewell, of course, as part of that big report into just basically, how white working class boys are the ones who are being failed. Everyone thinks, it's black kids, it's Asian kids. No, the kids who are most being failed in society right now is white working class boys. We'll talk to a guest about that a little bit later. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that too. 0344 499 1000. Also give us a call about what's going on with Iran, how worried you are, anti-Semitism, you name it, give us a call. Nick is on the line. He's done just that. He wants to talk about anti-Semitism. Good morning to you, Nick.
Yes, hello, Julia.
Hi.
I rather enjoyed your rant. I was sitting there cheering you on. I agree with every word, so don't apologise for it. No need. The rise of anti-Semitism can be linked directly back to our governing classes, establishment classes, not calling it out and acting against it.
Yeah.
And the most recent example is Ed Balls. Ed Balls, for heaven's sake, husband of the British Foreign Secretary, an ex-cabinet minister himself, and he seriously says the morning after to a Jewish man in golden.
To Gideon Falter, who was also on the show. This is on GMB yesterday, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It's all the fault of the rise of Islamophobia.
Oh, sorry, apologies. It was to Dov Foreman. Yeah, sorry, to Dov.
It's as a low point in a horse arsery. That could hardly be a beaten. What a stupid thing to say.
Yeah. But you hear that on the BBC all the time as well. This sort of, Israel. And then he's done it as sort of, well, what did they expect? You know, what with Israel? I mean, and constantly talk about, well, Netanyahu. I had this morning, not Netanyahu, I'm sorry, easy mistake to make. Jeremy Bowen talking about how Netanyahu's always wanted this war, and it's sort of no, he wants to eradicate the threat from Iran. He doesn't want a war. He wants to eradicate the threat from Iran to the people of Israel. It's not the same thing.
I know exactly right. No one wants. I mean, very rare do people of a democratic nation, which Israel is, want a war.
Yeah.
I mean, to quote a Don Corleone, war's very, very expensive. You don't want a war. You want to live in peace, and most people want to live. And in any event, I mean, there's no point going over old ground and who started what. The point you can only move forward from the base you're in, but the base needs to be calling out stupidity, wrongdoing, criminality,
lies,
wherever it is found.
Yeah. Absolutely. Nick, great call. Thank you so much. Let's go to Matt, who's in Cheadle Hulme. Hello, Matt.
Hi, Julie. You know.
You're all right, my love.
Yeah. I think this Trump thing, saying he's talking to Iran, is a bit of a destabilising thing, because all the generals and the brigadiers and everything have been looking at each other going, which one of you lot's talking to him?
Ah, OK. So, again, he's playing 4D chess and we don't realise it. And
yes.
And the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament says, you're not talking to me. Well, he would say that, wouldn't he?
Yes, it was a fellow called Maya Tusi on X who pointed this out last night.
Yeah, I mean, that is quite it would be quite a cunning thing, but I mean, it's also a very useful down ramp when he's looking at the oil price exploding and inflation and interest rates in America going up.
Yeah. And these lefty loonies on side who believe all the Hamas and the Iranian propaganda that's put out are absolute nut jobs.
They really are. I've kind of given up in trying to explain to them and giving them facts, because they're not interested in facts.
No, they don't care about it. I mean, I'd say certain things to some of them, and I might as well talk to my dog.
You get more sense, absolutely. Matt, thank you very much indeed for that. 10:36 is time. I'm going to take a quick break. We're going to be talking to Alan Mendoza about, well, what do we know about what's going on in Iran and indeed in America? This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:38 is the time. Let's talk to Dr. Alan Mendoza right now. He's Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society. He's also now Reform UK's Chief Advisor on Global Affairs. Good morning to you, Alan.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Is America in talks with Iran?
Well, we don't know. we simply don't know. There's claim, there's counterclaim. The truth is, they might be in talks with Iran, they might not be. Certainly, we are not going to find out until such time as it becomes publicly known that that is happening. But look, it would be feasible for there to be talks going on behind the scenes, which the Iranians would, of course, deny. It'll be feasible for there to be no talks behind the scenes, but Donald Trump is simply pretending there are to change the market. So anything, your guess is as good as mine on this.
It's very unusual, isn't it, where we're in a situation, of course, we're not going to trust what Iran says. They're a hostile enemy state, and we know they lie about everything. But then not being able to trust our biggest economic defence and security and trading ally, Donald Trump, when he says things. And when the story changes from not just day to day, but hour to hour about where we are. Gosh, this is terrible. I almost find myself feeling sorry for Keir Starmer.
Well, it's an amusing point, but in reality, it's because of the way Donald Trump purposely comports himself that he will literally take 180-degree turns within hours of each other, and therefore we're never quite sure which one is real. Now, in part, that is a negotiating tactic of his. It's not actually just chaos. It's organised chaos.
How do you know that? Because that's one of the theories. It is just sort of, he's unpredictable. You don't know what he's going to do. Look, good God, he's crazy enough to actually do this. We need to negotiate. But how do we know that for sure? I hope that is the case.
Well, no one can ever be sure, which is part of the whole point about the negotiating strategy. And look, in reality, in the past, we've seen him signal one thing and then do something quite different when it actually comes down to it. So again, I'm not quite sure, where we are at in terms of the thinking in the US as to how this war might come to a close. I can be certain there'll be many more pronouncements going this way and that way before we get to a conclusion, though.
Keir Starmer yesterday was at the liaison committee answering questions from committee chairs in the Commons and getting, a little bit annoyed with some of the questioning, particularly in relation to defence spending. He refused to give a timeline for when Britain would actually start spending 3% of GDP on defence spending. I would say that should have been about 5 years ago. I don't think we should ever really have gone below it, really. But he also basically blamed the last government for all the problems that we've got in terms of our lack of capability, and said, look, we've only been in office 18 months, but he had a bit of a tense exchange with Bernard Jenkin, a Tory MP, about that. But nevertheless, we know that Britain was given 11 days sort of formal notice that there was going to be action in the Gulf, and yet there was a failure to sort of get HMS Dragon ready, get the minesweepers back to the Gulf. Has there been a failure? And what you're now advising reform. What would reform do in terms of the spending on defence as a percentage of GDP?
So first, we're looking at obviously the long-term, if you like, sort of deterioration of British armed forces. That's been a process that's occurred over 30 years. It started in the 1990s, Conservative governments post-Cold War, in a sense, understandably, because it looked like the era of peace, started to run the military down. The Blair era continued that despite the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and then it really accelerated under the Conservative governments from 2010 to 2024. So I've got some sympathy for Keir Starmer when he says, well, we were dealt a bad hand. Yes, correct. But what have you done since you've come in? What have you done to change the trajectory? And the answer is not very much. He's admitted yesterday that the UK is not on a war footing. Well, that's ridiculous, given the UK has been somewhat engaged in the Ukraine war. It's been engaged in the Iran war. And to say we're not on a war footing when it's obvious the threats are increasing rather than decreasing says that he's not been prepared. He's not been ready. And for this conflict, he wasn't ready, despite knowing about it somewhat in advance. We didn't move the right ships into place as to where we thought they would be. We were able to move some aircraft in, that's quite clear. But it seems that for whatever reason, we didn't do what needed to be done before a conflict in order to protect our assets and our civilians around the world. So, you've got that situation where this government can be held to account and must be held to account for its defensive failures and its clear inability to get to that 3%. And reform's quite obvious about this. Reform's going to head there very quickly, and that's the difference between I think, the parties.
Very quickly, we would not likely to get into power unless if you got into power.
Well, it can't do it until it gets into power. That's the whole point. But I think you'll see the first budget will be quite clear about the direction within which defence spending is going.
Here's the thing, though. The British public aren't very keen. People talk about they want to have strong defences, but they also don't want their taxes to go up. And the reality is we can't borrow anymore. Sorry, Rachel Reeves and Ed Miliband. Read the room. But also, taxing. We're at all-time high for taxes. People are struggling financially as it is. And again, those very wealthy people who are supposed to get all the taxes off, they're just going to leave if you try and tax them more. There'll be even less of a tax take. The British public are not, they're opposed to us having any involvement in this Iran war. The British public will be implacably opposed to a higher defence spending that affects them in their pocketbook until the moment when that defence spending is absolutely needed, and we'll have needed to have spent it 10 years earlier before we need it. This is the problem, because the British people are absolutely going to hold the British government to account when we don't have the defences we need, when we are directly under attack. Always a possibility, given we know Iran Iranian missile capability after that attempted attack on Diego Garcia. But it's going to be too late then.
Well, I'm going to give the British public more credit than that, Julia. And I think, thinking about it, you've been a bit uncharitable there. I think the British public know we're in a very...
The polls are very clear. People don't want their tax. They want more spending on the NHS, more defence spending, more this, more that, and they want their taxes to go down.
They need leadership.
Well, that doesn't work.
Well, they need leadership, don't they? They need the leaders who are going to tell them the truth about the world situation, the truth about what threats they face at home and abroad, and that they cannot be met without greater spending in this area. Now, if you tell people the truth, they usually respond to it. They usually go, actually, you have a point. I understand we're going to have to cut back in certain areas because this is the prime goal of any government. It is to keep the nation secure, and we want to feel secure. All of us want to feel secure. And so I think it's about identifying the areas clearly where spending has to be cut. And there are plenty of areas where spending has to be cut, particularly in the welfare area. And we've known the inverse relationship between defence and welfare since the 1960s. We've understood that as we've cut our defence and put more on welfare, it's been a one-way street. Well, the reality is we're going to have to turn that round, aren't we? Because now, in an era when we need more defence spending, it's obvious it has to come from the one area that's grown at the expense of defence.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more on that. Let me ask you also about the possibility that Iran is behind this, it's being investigated by the counter-terrorism police, therefore a suspected terror attack. This attack on those 4 ambulances, the community, volunteer ambulances in Golders Green, run by the local Jewish community. Metropolitan Police Chief Constable Sir Mark Rowley was saying that is something they're looking into, and an Iran-backed group has claimed online that, without showing any evidence that they were behind this, 3 suspects still on the loose who were filmed on that CCTV camera. You've been looking into sort of the terror threat, the extremist threat in this country for many years at the Henry Jackson Society. How likely do you think that is?
Well, I think it's very, very possible because we've seen similar attacks in other places around the world which have been organised by the Iranians. So I think, that this has to be the prime suspect right now. There's been a claim of ownership of the crime. And I think, this is a very likely outcome. It's not the first time the Iranians have been active here. We've known that the Iranians have done plot after plot after plot in the UK. It wouldn't be therefore a stretch, Julia, to think that at this moment in time, the Iranians are trying to activate some of their agents, whether those are criminal gangs who they're hiring or sleeper cells who are here, in order to attack targets that they think should be attacked. And I just look back on that video. If you look at the video of the people coming in to actually set the ambulance on fire, very calm, very confident, very nonchalant. They knew exactly what they were doing and what they were aiming to do. There wasn't any furtive behaviour. They went straight in, did it. It seems to me that this was a very organised attack, actually, and there appears to have been some surveillance beforehand to get to this point. So that suggests that there may well be state-inspired support for this, because it will be an obvious case in point for what would be happening here. And like I said, Iran is very active in the UK. We were told last year 20 plots since 2022. That's gone up since then. We've just had the 2 Iranians arrested, of course, on suspicion of staking out other targets. So we know they're active. This would be very much in keeping with that. And that is why it's such a threat to this country, that we don't know necessarily the nature of how many Iranian sleeper cells there are, what the Iranian networks are. And we still appear to be doing very little about it, like banning and prescribing the RGC, which is such an obvious thing to do now. Yeah,
indeed. Really good to talk to you, Dr. Alan Mendoza from the Henry Jackson Society. Thank you very much indeed for that. Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online, listening to that. Any thoughts?
Well, just looking again at that footage, you just realise how embattled the British Jewish community is. The fact that it's almost become a provocation to have a synagogue or a Jewish school or a volunteer,
or wearing a kippah on your
hospital.
head.
So, I mean, there is no other community in the country who has to face this level of kind of ambient threat all of the time. Jewish school kids in this country have to go through almost airport-style security every single day just to try and maintain their own safety, and we've allowed this to happen. And this is the thing, is that
the authorities have allowed this to happen.
The authorities have allowed it to happen.
You and I have been speaking about this for quite a long time.
Yes, but the collective we, I suppose. But there is a sense in which people haven't even been aware this was going on. It's burst out into the open after October the 7th, even though people still try to deny and downplay it. But long before then, the way in which you would see stories like a Jewish cemetery desecrated or a synagogue smeared with God knows what, or this or that, every time conflict flares in the Middle East, it's taken out on British Jews. Nothing happened. The difference now is that politicians at least feel compelled to talk about it and offer some warm words. That's progress, I suppose. But what we've been missing is action, and we need it now more than ever.
Absolutely. 10:48 is the time. Your reaction to all of that, very, very welcome. And up next, going to talk to Rupert Darwell about the net zero fanaticism that is helping keeping us in the economic doldrums that we're in, where we actually can't basically defend ourselves, and we are going to be hit, whether this conflict ends in the next few days or weeks or not. We are going to be hit financially massively when it comes to our bills, thanks to that net zero madness. That's up next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:51 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Tom Slater's also with me, joined right now by Rupert Darwell, get it right, author of Green Tyranny, to talk about, well, one of my favourite topics, as you'll well know if you're a regular listener or viewer, and that is net zero madness, and in particular, one man's net zero madness. Yes, Ed Miliband, who's holding the country basically to ransom over his zealotry. A very good morning to you, Rupert.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, let's face it, we are in a very bad economic state, and one of the reasons we're in a very bad economic state is we don't have plentiful, reliable, cheap energy, which is absolutely vital for a nation to survive. We also don't have that energy for producing the defence goods that we need as well. But the Conservatives, Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, has been very, very clear. They've got an Opposition Day vote in Parliament today, a debate in Parliament today. They want to force the unlocking of the development of the Rosebank oil field and the Jackdaw gas field in the North Sea. Look, they're not going to win it. Labour will vote against it. But basically, she's saying that Ed Miliband's net zero fanaticism is making Britain poorer and weaker. I mean, she's not wrong, is she?
No, Julia, she's absolutely right on this one, and it's a smart move by the Conservatives to force Labour into the division lobbies to vote for energy insanity. It's completely mad. The government's position simply doesn't stack up. They don't want the jobs in the North Sea. They don't want the extra tax revenues in the North Sea. They don't want the export earnings. They say we've got to get off fossil fuels. Well, even if we did get off fossil fuels, Julia, we could export the stuff.
Yeah.
We could export the stuff.
But we're constantly told by Ed Miliband, interview after interview, and he sort of does this wonderful sort of patronising, look, he says at the start of the interview, look, you know, even if we did basically drill for oil and gas like the Norwegians are still doing in, by the way, the same basin of supply, they're still getting loads of oil and gas and tax revenues from it. We're not. No one can quite work out why, other than this net zero fanaticism. Even if we did that, that wouldn't make a blind bit of difference to our energy bills, either now or in the long term. Now, I can understand why now, if you had, because we've got drilling right now, but we're not allowed any new exploration. Even if they started new exploration tomorrow, I understand that my bills wouldn't be going down, the day after. But is he right to say our bills wouldn't go down because there's a global gas market and therefore we'd still be paying the same?
Well, he's wrong on there being a global gas market. There are quite localized markets for gas, and that's really a function of the pipeline infrastructure. So there's a Western European gas market. But what everyone misses out on this is the effect on the exchange rate. If you look at since the Iran war started, the dollar has strengthened. Why has the dollar and the pound has weakened? Why has the dollar strengthened? Because they are a petrocurrency. If you have more energy resources, the financial markets, the currency markets reward that with a stronger exchange rate. This stuff, if it's priced in euros or dollars or whatever, obviously if the pound goes up, the price of energy in Britain comes down. That is blindingly obvious, and they consistently ignore. They just want a weak pound and a weak Britain.
But this is the thing. So even again, we're told, well, we won't get any of the gas and the oil. It's basically it's licensed. It's owned technically by the British government or the British state, but it's licensed to these private companies that find it, explore and extract it and sell it. But they are taxed to the hilt, and we're constantly told that there's all this price gouging going on, and isn't this terrible? But actually, these companies are taxed to the absolute hilt. I mean, is it 78% marginal rate? I think. So if they are selling it, again, the Chancellor, the government, the British people get the funds from that. But also, as you say, things like gas. We currently import a load of gas, liquefied natural gas from America, from elsewhere, and some countries like Pakistan rely entirely on liquefied natural gas from, I think, Qatar. But if we had gas coming in from the North Sea, it would be in pipelines. We would control that. So in the event of an energy crisis, we can say we get first dibs on the gas, couldn't we?
Well, we could say that. I mean, there are risks in putting export embargoes. I mean, generally speaking, you want to let markets work, and we're not at that point. But the key thing is, obviously, you're better off if you use your natural resources, and particularly at a time when the price goes up, the value of what's underground under the North Sea also goes up, and therefore you want to incentivize oil and gas companies to exploit that, develop it, and make Britain better off. I think there's a lot of what Labour ministers are doing is throwing a lot of sand in people's eyes, because this so conflicts with their ideology. And I think where Kimmy Badenoch's absolutely right. This is zealotry. This is net zero fanaticism.
It's not based on facts, is it?
It's or rationality. It is completely irrational.
One of the things I've learned in the last couple of years, which genuinely terrifies me, is, and we know we've destroyed a lot of our gas storage facilities. So again, we know, you are not using renewables like wind and solar for anything other than your electricity. You're not, you can't replace the fossil fuels, which are 80% at the current time with those anyway. So we're still going to need fossil fuels. We're just going to import them rather than using the homegrown ones. But France and Germany have up to 100 days gas storage. So they've literally stored a load of gas. So if there's a massive price spike, if there's a massive shortage on the market, they've got that gas storage. We have storage facilities for just 2 weeks, but in terms of their actual use at the current time, we only have a few days of gas stored. This is an abject failure of basic economic and defence and security planning, isn't it?
Well, that's right. But I have to say, Julia, the best hedge against shortages of natural gas is coal.
Yeah.
And of course, and what we're seeing that the Italians are thinking of taking coal-fired power stations, demothballing them, operationalizing them. In Thailand, they're doing that. There's big switch from gas to coal. Coal is the most secure. It's the cheapest form of energy. You
But
just
it's
stockpile
dirty.
it.
It's dirty.
So we blew up our coal-fired power stations. So we don't have the option that the Germans have, the Italians have, the Thais have, to keep our lights on by burning coal. It is criminally irresponsible, and that was the last Conservative government.
Well, I was going to say they don't get off scot-free. Kemi Badenoch, and I questioned her about this, and you support this issue that she did speak out about it. She says, but I mean, frankly, not enough. You and I have been doing it long before it became fashionable. I can see no point when they're not going to have to give up on this. Even Keir Starmer's going to eventually have to say to Ed Miliband, we can't do this. But that depends how long he lasts in office, doesn't he? Rupert Darwell, author of Green Tyranny, always great to talk to you. Thank you so much. Tom Slater, I know, I mean, you're fully on board with this. Is this utter madness?
No, and it has been for a very long time. You would think that war and all the crises we've had would shake them out of it, but nothing seems to.
I know, it really is terrible. I genuinely consider Ed Miliband to be terrifying, but the man who employs him is the problem, and that's one Keir Starmer. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Coming up in the next hour, lots more top guests. Also going to be talking about that report into, the people who are most suffering in this country these days. Oh, no, it's not any different group other than, whatever, the white working class boys yet again. That's up next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. It's 2 minutes past 11 o'clock. This is Talk with a home of common sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio or your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you as always for joining us. If you've missed anything of the show, don't forget you can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe, you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking about Donald Trump's claim about US talks with Iran. Is it true, or is it, as the Iranians say, fake news? How Britain has failed white working class boys. And Keir Starmer is under fire, claiming that petrol stations are price gouging without actually any evidence that they're doing that. They're putting prices up because, well, their supplies are going up in price. We'll talk about all of that, plenty more besides. Joining me for all the chat today, delighted to say, is editor of Spiked Online, Tom Slater. Morning once again to you. Let's just go back to where we are in terms of the Iran-US talks. We went from this bizarre situation of America's going to obliterate, every Iranian energy facility if they don't reopen the Strait of Hormuz, and that was a deadline given on Saturday for Monday about midnight UK time. So yesterday, during the middle of the show, we got this Truth Social post from Donald Trump saying he's been in talks with the Iranians over the last couple of days, and they were very hopeful they can enter 5 days basically of talks and hoping to bring this conflict to a complete end and cessation of certainly any attacks on energy facilities. The Iranians have hit back and said, we've not been talking to you. Who are you talking to? We've been talking to the leader of the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament. He's tweeted to say, no, you haven't. I mean, as Christine Keeler said, he would say that, wouldn't he? But we really have no idea whether these talks are happening, whether talks which we're told might happen in Pakistan will be happening. What do you think is actually going on? Is Donald Trump playing 4D chess and doing the sort of, no, over here, over there, and you don't know what I'm going to do, so you're going to have to be wary? Or are we in territory where Donald Trump is just very afraid, frankly, of the economic fallout hitting his voter base? Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult to tell. I think that actually kind of electoral calculations are probably further down his list of priorities than they otherwise would be. He isn't going to have a third term. He's not allowed to, although some people think he wants to try and have one. He's not really that bothered about the Republican Party. Obviously, if he did get tied up... No, but he wants power. He loses the Senate and Congress is now looking, and the House of Representatives, now looking likely under the current polling. That makes a massive impact. He's a complete lame duck president. I know, but it's kind of nailed on anyway to a certain extent. I think he's gambled everything on this war being his legacy, whether he... fully realises that or not. It's really difficult to tell. Depending on who you talk to, he's either playing some kind of genius game of strategy or he's rattling around from one position to the other. And maybe the truth is somewhat in the middle. There is clear that in times of war, you can't expect any government or any leader to perfectly telegraph to you exactly what they're doing and in what order and what the clear objectives are. But I think it's fair to say that the way in which Trump is going about it does add to the pretty well-worn suspicion that this was entered into without a clear sense of a plan and a clear appreciation of the potential consequences. I'm saying earlier, I get very fed up with the BBC sort of going on about, Netanyahu wants this war, wants to continue this war. No, Netanyahu, like the Israeli people who very much are in favour of this conflict, this action being taken, believe this conflict to be necessary to protect themselves, given that Iran has been threatening to annihilate Israel on a pretty much hourly basis for pretty much since the existence of the Ayatollah's regime, and has been funding whether it's the Hamas, whether it's Hezbollah, the Houthis and others, to actually carry out that work on a closer basis pretty much every single day ever since. It is very, very, very clear that Iran is an existential threat to the people of Israel and to the Israeli state. They have different war aims from the Americans. This is a war of choice for the Americans to the extent of, the timing of it and whether or not you decide the risk is greater from having this war now or from allowing Iran to get nuclear weapons. I'm very much in favour of the Western democracies and military powers like America taking on these threats before they, when someone says, I've got a knife now, I'm going to go and get my machine gun and I'm coming back. I say take them out there and then rather than waiting for them to come back in 2 weeks' time or 2 years' time or 10 years' time with a machine gun. I really do. I think it's crazy for us to be so lax on the safety of ourselves and our allies. The fact that we've got this ballistic missile attack on Diego Garcia, look, we don't know where the missiles actually were hit down and where the one that fell into the ocean fell. But the possibility of Iran having missiles that could hit Britain, you think, but they wouldn't hit us. They're lunatics. They are absolute nihilist, theologians. Of course they could possibly do that. You just don't know. That's a risk that's not worth taking. But it doesn't appear that we are in the loop, able to, even when we're kept in the loop, able to actually act. Keir Starmer yesterday refusing to even give a timeline for putting defence spending up to 3%. I mean, we've got war in Europe, we've got this war in the Middle East. Both are impacting us economically and defence-wise. The possibility that the Iranians could have been behind this attack on this Golders Green ambulance service yesterday, the arson attack on 4 ambulances. I mean, we ain't got a choice. We're involved already. Yes, exactly. And I think it's quite clear that Keir Starmer is a man not
fit for these times.
Yes.
That's been clear for a while now, but it's become brutally
too
clear.
Plodding, isn't it?
Exactly. He doesn't have. I mean, on the one hand, he just doesn't have the sort of vision to take the country on the journey that it needs to be taken on, which is to say, the post-Cold War peace dividend is over. It's been over for some time now. The time in which Western Europe in particular, but many countries across the West, could indulge a ballooning welfare state that doesn't even necessarily help the people it's supposed to help, let alone help the country's finances, is done. That we do have conflict on our doorstep, that we are involved, that we are affected, even if we're not an actual party directly to these conflicts. He's not the person taking us on that journey. But even if you just take the circumstances as they are, what could he do? How can he react in the moment? It's slow, it's plodding, it's equivocal. He toys with the idea early on in the conflict of allowing America to use the air bases, but he can't get it past Ed Miliband and Rachel Reeves, two other great figures in our politics, regrettably. This is
and Zach
problem.
Polanski, the Green Party leader, who's basically running our policy, our foreign policy.
Who probably
right
thinks
now.
we should get round the table with the Ayatollah, maybe via a Ouija board or something, and just hash this out between friends. That's his sort of view of these matters. So even
maybe
taking
he could hypnotise them into stopping the war.
He could hypnotise them into all sorts of things if his history is anything
I'm
to
one of
go
the lucky
by.
recipients.
So, although
I think I've actually made him speechless. Sorry about that.
I'm laughing so much I've started to cough. But Zach Polanski, get him on a plane, get him to Tehran.
Yeah.
Job done.
Absolutely, and he can take all his little trans friends with him because they'll love them there, won't they? I mean, a question I'm asking our audience today, you can always get in touch. As I always make that clear, you decide what you want to call in about, but particularly sort of combining it all, how worried are you about the Iran war continuing, the impact on our safety? Iranians, if there seems possibility that it's being investigated by the counter-terrorism police are behind an attack on ambulances in Golders Green yesterday. The impact on our energy prices. Whether we like it or not, we're going to be impacted by this. I mean, partly because of the failures of the last Tory government and the failures of this Labour government, we are not prepared either defence-wise or economically or energy-wise to withstand these sort of shocks, not just very well, frankly, at all. But I'm wondering, how worried you actually are about that, because I'm trying to think of I'm something scared. I'm worried. We are just absolutely. We just left the door wide open on all these fronts. Give us a call 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1. Standard network rate message. Are you? Would you say you'd use the word worried, Tom?
Oh, yeah, worried doesn't quite cover it. This is something where, as soon as, forget this Iran war, as soon as October the 7th happened, you could easily see a path to this sucking in more powers via Iran than even Russia and Ukraine in certain respects. If you think about all the players in the region, if you think about just more than a week ago when there was that missile that was seemingly heading for Turkey at one point, potentially bringing NATO into the equation, there were all of these different factors at play.
Turkey won't take any nonsense.
No, that's certainly true.
They're very, I've got a lot of issues with Erdogan. He's an awful human being, but they know how to defend their country.
And it's something which is destabilising, because war is always destabilising. There's obviously the particular economic impact because of the Strait of Hormuz, which again is one of the reasons that American presidents, even if they were as gung-ho, if not more so, about conflict than Donald Trump, were always very wary of, and yet that seems to have gone out the window. But also because we're confronted by all of these crises, with Europe in particular being very weak, both economically and militarily. And you put all those things together and it's a pretty dangerous mix. What we need is leadership and statesmanship.
I mean, Macron, is interesting that the French, they spend less money as a percentage of GDP, they spend less money as an actual lump sum on their defence, and yet have a hell of a lot more, hardware than we do for the money. But they've got better negotiators, put it that way. And Friedrich Merz, the German Chancellor, he's been really impressive on the immigration issue, on Ukraine, on Iran. He seems to be really sound. He's got a bit of oomph about him, and he's in a coalition government. And the problem we've got is our plodding Prime Minister. He's a ditherer, he's a plodder, he's indecisive, he doesn't have any principles, doesn't have any strategies, doesn't have any backbone. That's a bad combination when we really do need a statesman.
No, I think that's completely right. And we also need someone who is willing to sort of roll up his sleeves and do things which might be a little bit painful for the country, might be a bit of an adjustment, but I think you can bring the country with you. You can land an argument, which is to say that times have changed, that we need to go in a different direction.
We made a mistake.
Yeah, precisely. And also that there are things that we need to address which are about, making sure that people can live a better life. And a lot of these things are downstream from the kind of economic torpor that we've been in for some time. That's something which needs to be dealt with and will require some pretty structural changes.
But you've got to remember, a lot of the net zero stuff, whether it's the Green Party, Labour Party, and actually a lot of, the Tories as well, this idea that we're a consumer society and all this cheap energy and this is just about consumerism and it's not actually good for us. And it's like, sod off people living in their own homes with lots of stuff and going on their nice holidays. Actually, there are millions of people who would very much like and need a better life, thank you very much. And having affordable energy is an important thing. In an hour and a bit's time, Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, is going to make a statement in the House of Commons about sort of what basically sort of giving an outline, sort of mood music rather than any specifics about what help the British government will be giving using taxpayers' money. They don't have any money on their own. It's not free to help people with their energy bills. I think after we get this, the next price cap's we're going to see bills go down in April, but let's face it, in July they're going to go way high up, probably like 300 quid. That is huge sum of money for an awful lot of households. Got no savings, they've got no room to manoeuvre, and they're going to be seeing their council tax going up, all the other bills going up. You go to the supermarket, you're filling up the car. Again, car's not a luxury for most people in this country, it's a necessity. People are really, really struggling. And she's going to be making a statement. But the thing is, again, you've got someone who just doesn't even appear to have a working abacus, who's making these statements and just isn't up to it. And we're talking about are we going to go back to what Liz Truss did in 2022 when everyone just went, get the government bail everyone out? Well, that was, I think, around 40 billion. At one point they predicted it could cost 160 billion. That's how mad it was at the time, but the markets straightened themselves out pretty quickly. We don't have a spare 40 billion. We don't have a spare 4 billion. But that help is going to be targeted at the poorest people. But we wouldn't have to target help at people if we didn't have sky-high energy prices. Why are energy prices so high? Because we're relying on ridiculously expensive subsidised fossil fuels. We've got massive fuel duty, massive VAT. OK, it's at 5%, but it's a huge part of the actual bill you pay, and all these green subsidies. The biggest part of them, when you pay for your energy bill, the biggest part of that is government taxes. So the government's taking money, making it more expensive for us, and now they're going to offer some help back. I mean, this is insane. Left hand, right hand.
No, it is, and I think we're all hopefully finally getting to grips with the fact that these fundamental things of energy, making sure that it's cheap, reliable, plentiful, all the rest of it, is foundational, and not just to your energy bills as well. That's one thing, the knock-on effects of
food,
the straightforward
everything you buy.
Exactly, having to transport it, all of these things add up and up and up and up. And I think the difficulty
We're not going to do it on solar panels.
Yeah.
Are we not just going to float food in on solar
panels? No, exactly.
There's
this fantasy that is still being indulged, and you see it not just from the Prime Minister and from Ed Miliband and from Rachel Reeves, but also just the kind of commentariat generally, who are continuing to say with a straight face that this squeeze on oil and gas in the Strait of Hormuz, which is already having such horrific economic consequences, is proof that we need to just do net zero properly now.
Yeah.
That it's never really been tried. That actually the way out of this is more windmills and solar panels and so on and so forth, despite the fact there's no country on earth who has been able to make itself prosperous in the long term.
Sri Lanka tried this, didn't have any fertiliser, made using fossil fuels. Basically half of the food that the world eats is made using fertiliser from fossil fuels. That's what keeps 8 billion people alive on this planet. And in Sri Lanka, people were literally starving. Yeah. That's why they stormed the palace. The president was ousted because they basically tried this net zero experiment, a proper experiment, at the behest of all the agencies.
Exactly.
Go, oh no, try it out. It doesn't work. There's some really simple graphs of energy prices and reliability and how economies do. There is no rich country where people are doing well, where they can fund the NHS and health and education and transport. There is no rich country in the world which does not have cheap, affordable, flowing energy. It is that simple. It is the lifeblood of the economy, and no country has ever got healthier, people living longer, or people happier by getting poorer. These things are all in conjunction with each other. It is the lifeblood of modern society, and it is mind-blowing that we have anybody who is in charge of this country who does not get that, because these people, frankly, they are economic ignoramuses. They really are. It's quite shocking. So that's what I want to talk about, including how much we have failed white boys. We're going to be talking about that at 11:30, but I just want to bring you in on that first, because the Tory peer Lord Sewell, who sadly was going to be on the show, but unfortunately he's got a Lord Select Committee meeting. But Lord Sewell's he's a Tory peer now. He's the author of a report on race and ethnic disparities. And he actually chaired an inquiry by 10 commissioners back in 2021 after the Black Lives Matter movement. Boris Johnson asked Sewell to chair that inquiry, all but one of whom actually were from ethnic minorities. And their conclusion, their 250-page report, which of course horrified the woke and the great and the good, was that the biggest drivers of disparities were not race and racism in this country, as Black Lives Matter were trying to claim, and history of slavery and all that. It was actually your class you're born in, where you live, and family stability. And who does worse? White working class boys in particular. They're the ones who are being failed. And he's going to be saying in a report that's been published this week, Centre for Social Justice. It was out at the weekend, but actually formally published today, showing that little has changed since then, and white working class boys are still the ones who are being failed. Again, doesn't get enough publicity, but this is a story that keeps coming up and keeps coming back, and no one does anything about it.
No, because it's decided, it kind of disrupts the narrative, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I suppose, because when you point out that if you look at educational attainment, if you look at all kinds of different outcomes in terms of work and life and so on, white working class boys are either at the bottom of the pile or very close to it. It completely flips the script. The idea that racism and race is the determining factor in all circumstances doesn't make any sense. White
people bad, black people victims, patronising and offensive to both sides.
No, exactly, and yet that's clearly not been true for a very long time. And also the picture is very complicated. If you look at, for instance, everyone treats this as a kind of white and non-white issue, but if you look at how black African boys do in school, a hell of a lot better than black Caribbean boys. All of these things are obvious to anyone who's looked at the data. I think where white working class boys are concerned.
Indian boys and girls, much better than Pakistani and Bangladeshi boys and girls. Again, huge disparities there.
Exactly, because culture matters, because family structure matters, migratory flows, and
attitudes
class,
towards education, aspiration,
all sorts of things play into it. And I think where white working class boys are concerned, it's kind of perfect storm. Can be concentrated in various parts of the country where there isn't a lot of opportunity. There's also certain kind of social maladies and pathologies, fatherlessness and etc., which is often talked about mainly in relation to the black British community, but is a big problem amongst white working class communities as well. And social class being the kind of foundational thing amongst all of that. On top of that is the fact that it's not an issue people feel comfortable talking about. There aren't programmes that exist for the uplift of white working class boys. It's not an issue.
Well, the BBC doesn't have trainee schemes for white working class boys. It's got them for every ethnic minority, trans, gay, you name it. But not for white working class boys, the people at the bottom of the pile. And so there are all of these aspects to it. The identity politics completely mitigates against this issue being even accepted. Doesn't fit the narrative. An issue, let alone take it seriously. But I think the main thing is that social class has been edged out as the key way in which we understand disadvantage. If you fix that, I think you start to fix a lot of the problems. You can't fix a problem until you've identified what it is. And if you think the problem in this country is racism, every single scenario, or sexism, women aren't running all the FTSE 100 companies. Why not? Frankly, because they're too sane to do so. They'd like to have a more sensible work-life balance, and they're not motivated by showing off their Porsche and their Rolex, but actually by having a happy family life. I'm so sorry. Are women different to men? Oh, apparently they are, but we're not allowed to say that because it doesn't fit the narrative. I mean, it is extraordinary. Just one final thing I want to talk to you about. And again, sort of story often we don't touch on this show, but actually does matter an awful lot of people. I don't have a pet at the moment at all, but I've got a lot of friends with pets, and God, one of the things they talk about is the vet fees, just off the scale. I have to say, when we did have the guinea pigs, 10 plus years ago, those vet fees, I think it was when my husband went, that's enough now, we're done. We're done trying to keep these things alive. They're rats. They're rats with good PR. That's all they are. I still miss you, Autumn and Midnight. I still miss you. But I completely understand, especially when people have got dogs and cats as well. But I had a dog when I grew up. They're one of the family. It's as simple as that. You have a completely, proper relationship with your pet. But a new report from the Competition and Markets Authority claimed today that they need to reform basically the sector for veterinary fees, because basically 6 big firms have bought up all the vets pretty much in the country. And what a surprise, we have suddenly seen all of the fees go up. Most vets don't have even on their website anything about what their fees are, just the initial consultation, what prescriptions cost and the like. They're going to cap vet prescription fees at £21. Again, it's less than a tenner. for a human being, but people are often ending up, even with insurance, ending up having to pay extra. But people are looking at, paying a few £100 just to see a vet and paying sometimes thousands for operations for their pets. There's definitely something going on here, isn't there?
No, absolutely. It seems that the way in which you've got the concentration of ownership certainly doesn't help. I'm sure there are various things in relation to how this sector is regulated which almost certainly don't help. It's just difficult because people are of course they're not going to want to give up their pets. We are a nation of dog lovers in particular, but pet lovers in general, and no one wants to be forced into that position where they're thinking, oh, can we afford to keep the puppy alive? I mean,
that's
they're being
what people
forced
are choosing.
into it, and it's really unfortunate. So the extent to something that can be done which doesn't make the issues worse.
But 6 firms, isn't enough. Now it's interesting because we've got maybe 6 big supermarkets, but they really do compete with each other. But that's different because you've got your Morrisons, your Tesco, and your Sainsbury's or whatever in the same high street. Whereas for lots of people, whereas vets, you just go to your local vet, but you don't know that the prices are different. And this is the thing where if the different prices are published, you can actually choose. I'll go to the cheaper one. Then at least, that will start driving down prices. We know that's how competition works.
No, exactly. And it's never going to be a kind of perfect market in the way that some of these other ones are, which therefore there's probably maybe a little bit more room for government intervention. But yeah, it's something which is becoming just a expense far beyond what anyone has ever expected it to be, and that
there's no real explanation for why it should suddenly have gone up so much, other than
they can
they can exactly when people are desperate for their pets. I mean, exactly, and a lot of people think of their pets like their kids, for goodness sake. Your thoughts on that? Love to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Lots of calls coming in on net zero, on anti-Semitism, which we talked about a lot in the first hour. We'll return to, but also on the how worried are you about the Iran war continuing, the impact on our economy, but also our energy prices, also on our safety. With that attack in Golders Green on those ambulances, the police and counter-terrorism unit are investigating whether or not Iran was behind that. We've got a foreign nation, possibly organising firebombing of ambulances in this country. Wake up, everybody. We need to talk about this, eh? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Let's get to your messages straight up after this break. This is Talk.
The UK on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:28 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Let's go to Craig, who is in Leeds. And Craig, you want to talk about the net zero madness that is basically threatening our economy.
Yes, I do. I think Ed Miliband still lives in the 1800s when we kind of rules the world, because half the world, over 4 billion people, do not care about net zero. If you go to countries, say Thailand, you can't even see the buildings because of the smoke. When you look at some of these countries that are out there, they do not care about net zero.
Well, they care about getting their people better off, you know, and building their economies, funnily enough.
Exactly. Yet we are less than 1%. And Ed Miliband and this country is so arrogant to think that that can make such a change of 70 million people versus 4 billion people who do not care.
Here's my thing, Craig. This argument, I've always thought was actually quite spurious. Even if we were 50% of emissions, I still wouldn't want us to be basically committing economic suicide. As and when we've developed completely reliable, cheap and affordable and sustainable renewables, 100% let's move to that. Until that point, I want my fossil fuels, please.
Totally agree.
End of.
Totally agree.
I know I don't believe that humans are driving climate change. There's really, I mean, again, this is apparently settled science according to Ofcom, high Ofcom, but there's no such thing as settled science, and there's really no evidence for this at all. So
there is no. I totally agree. One food for thought, very quickly. The American troops do not land until Friday.
This is the US Marines who are coming over from America.
Yes.
With all their they've got their own air force, their own navy, effectively, and there's talk about them seizing Karg Island, crucial for oil production and oil exports for Iran. Yeah,
correct. So Trump, I believe, is buying time because they do not arrive until Friday.
But he would have known that when he gave his ultimatum on Saturday.
No, well, it would have taken a little bit longer, but they then need a day to plan. So if they get there on Friday and then the strikes start on Saturday.
You think we're talking at US Marines? So that's what they do. They basically seize territory. They're not going to be invading the whole of Iran, but seizing Karg Island.
Yes.
Okay. We'll bookmark this one, and if you're right, there you go. Craig, thank you for that. Let's go to Caroline, who is in London. Caroline, you want to talk about the rising anti-Semitism. I mean, the Home Secretary, Shbana Mahmood, has recognised it. All the politicians wringing their hands in Golders Green at the site of that arson attack on those ambulances. What do you want to say?
Well, firstly, I want to say a big thank you to you, Julia, because you have been the most incredible person and reporter and journalist for the Jewish people. And we all really appreciate everything you do.
That's very kind of you. I always say it shouldn't be necessary.
No, absolutely. So what I really want to say is I think yesterday for me tipped the balance, because October the 7th changed me, and I just think that it's over. I think this country's over, not just for the Jews that's becoming smaller and smaller, because I think there's only just under 300,000 here now, but this is affecting the whole of the country, the British as well. I cannot listen anymore or want to hear or see any politician opening their mouths, because it's all rhetoric, nothing. And for Wes Streeting to appear at Golders Green after what he said in his WhatsApp with Mandelson is so abhorrent. And they're still not they're still not prescribing the IRCG as terrorists. They're still not closing Muslim Brotherhood. And these hate marches, they're not free speech anymore. They've got to stop them, and Labour won't do it.
No, they won't. And neither did the Tories either. I mean, I remember Suella Braverman, when she was Home Secretary, she got sacked, basically, for wanting to, calling them hate marches.
Absolutely. So where do we go with this? Because the country, I've just come back from abroad. I've met random people from all over the world. And Asia, by the way, is going through the roof. They are talking about net zero. They don't even know what the word means there. But every single person I met, randomly in the street, at the airport, where are you from? London. Oh, my God, what the hell is going on there? And it's terrifying. I don't want to go to the West End anymore. I don't know where this is going to end, and we can talk about it. But Julia, where is this going to end?
That's I have to say, that's what I was thinking last night. I was looking at social media as well, just thinking we are in some very, very, very scary territory right now. I completely understand. But you know what? We need to speak up. More people can get speaking up. More people say enough and forcing our politicians to act. And I think we're going to have to round a hell of a lot of people up. I really, really do. Caroline, thank you for that call. Appreciate it. 11:33 is the time. Up next, we are going to be talking to the New Cultural Forum's Philip Kisley about, well, how we have failed white working class boys. They are the ones who are usually at the bottom of the pile economically, socially, educationally, when it comes to everything. And yet, why does everyone keep bleating on about how the white working class are the problem? That's up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:35 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Tom Slater's also still with me. Delighted to welcome Dr. Philip Kisley, who's a senior fellow at the New Culture Forum, to the show. Good morning to you, Philip.
Hi, Julia. It's great to see you.
Great to see you again. Now, I want to talk to you about a new report out. It was leaked sort of at the weekend, but it officially comes out today. I think we had been hoping to talk to the author of the report, Lord Tony Sewell, about it. And sadly, a select committee meeting in the House of Lords or something terribly important like that was changed. And we're very, very grateful to you for stepping in. But this is a report published by the Centre for Social Justice, the think tank, basically showing that little has changed since a report way back, way back about 4 or 5 years ago, which was basically commissioned by Boris Johnson when he was Prime Minister. And it was after the Black Lives Matter explosion of, frankly, let's be honest, madness that went on over a couple of years there. And he basically asked Lord Tony Sewell, who is a black peer, to chair an inquiry of 10 commissioners, one of whom, by the way, were from ethnic minorities. I only mention this because it is relevant to the conclusions. 250-page report, and they were looking at the disparities between different races in society. And obviously, in the wake of the BLM crisis, they were supposed to report about what terrible racism there was. And actually what they reported was actually the biggest drivers of disparity were not race. It was about whether you're working class or middle class. It was where you lived. It was also family stability, family breakdown, whether you had a dad in the home. And it turned out that it was the white working class who were basically doing the worst. And Tony Sewell in his latest report has basically said, yeah, and it's still the same now. First of all, why is that?
Well, I think for various reasons, really. I think the white working class have been demonised over the last 20 or 30 years. And we see now, I mean, I was just as you were saying that, I was thinking, my God, 2021, that feels like a lifetime ago. And It really isn't. So much has changed there, but so much is the same. We have social justice activism, which is rife in the institutions and particularly in education. So we have anti-whiteness, we have decolonization, we have all of those things that viewers know about, okay? And they're like a cuckoo in the nest. So that's what students get taught about. That's what pupils get taught about. They don't actually get taught that much about subjects, okay? I know
God forbid they should know facts.
Well, no, they should facts or subject-specific material. I know this because I spent 25 years in the university sector, and that was one of the things that eventually drove me out. But if you go prior to 2021, to the build-up for this report, you see that we went on an activism kind of mania in this country. So it started with Me Too, then it went to, everyone went race simple with BLM, and it was at that point where whiteness was demonized, and particularly white working class people and white working class men and boys were the lowest of the low. They were a target. Okay?
They were ignorant, they were racist, they were bigoted, they were violent. They were sexist, they were everything that was wrong.
They were everything that was wrong. And because they were everything that was wrong, they don't have a safety net. They don't have the same kind of social and cultural safety net that all other demographics and groups have. So what do you see? If you go out into the town centre, or if you go out into central London, as you and I spend lots and lots of time in central London because we both work there, what you see is homeless people lurching about. They are white working class men primarily because they are forgotten, they are lost. And it's almost as if there's some kind of symbol in a way. It's like, look, this is the patriarchy. This used to be on top, but we've sacrificed it, and it's not anymore. It's everything's okay. Everything's not okay. Everything's terrible. White working class boys do not get to university. Okay, they just don't. Well,
they don't get many GCSEs. I mean, it's amazing. White working class boys basically on free school meals. So people who really have got parents who in dire financial straits, they're more likely to fail GCSE English and Maths, more likely to be excluded from school, least likely to stay on an education after 16, and that then moves on into unemployment risks, your chances of falling into alcoholism and drugs, into criminality, into therefore, also failed relationships. Every single thing just sort of gathers speed at that point, doesn't it?
Well, one key word there, or one key phrase that just comes out of everything you've just said there, is social isolation and economic hardship. That is, that's what many white working class boys have to look forward to, because they are isolated, they are ostracized from the system. And who is it who is killing themselves, who are depressed, who are anxious, who are in lots of ways violent and on the receiving end of violence? In many ways, it's white working class boys, and many of them end up in prison. So we have a crisis here, but this crisis is made by our society because our society has demonized them. Now, this was in 2021, Julia, and nothing's changed because essentially the same people are running the schools and in education. Essentially the same kind of person, but more so is in government.
But with chunkier jewellery and a rainbow lanyard now. But the key thing is, what's so extraordinary is that when that report came out, and then again, there was no agenda to this, although the accusation was, but Boris Johnson, a Tory Prime Minister, deliberately put people on this commission who would come up with those results. But they were factually based results, looking at the actual statistics. But it was just dismissed by the left, just dismissed by all the diversity obsessed people, because it didn't suit their narrative of white people oppressors, anyone of any colour oppressed. And this is the weird thing, because Tom Slater and I were discussing a few moments ago, the stats show that there are so many other factors driving this, and family is definitely a crucial one, and education also a crucial one of parents, but and cultural background. So in the same way that your West African boys, they're not doing badly at school. They're coming from sort of very strong family units, often a strong Christian belief, and they're doing way better than Afro-Caribbean boys who are coming from families which are, there's something like 40 or 50% single parenthood in Afro-Caribbean families in this country, which is an absolute crisis, lack of fathers. And then you've got, Indian families. I mean, Indians and Chinese kids, they're at the top of the pile, way higher than the white, middle-class kids. And even if they're coming from poorer backgrounds, because, again, that strong family unit, strong emphasis on education, and then although let's face it, given it's supposed to all be driven by racism, to your average racist, I don't know if they can tell the difference between someone who's Indian or Pakistani or Bangladeshi, but Pakistani and Bangladeshi boys doing far worse than Indian boys. I mean, it's not about colour. There's clearly culture, and it would seem to me culture and family seem to be the two key things there.
I think they are the driving factors, and if there is any kind of racism in this country, then clearly
there is racism.
It's anti-white racism that is the primary driving factor here. Of course, there's always going to be racism, but what we've got, and we should do what we can to stamp it out. But what we have here in our mainstream education system is yet again a two-tier system. It is as though white working class boys are second-class citizens. Yeah. They don't get the same kind of chances for a set of reasons that are all interlinked, whether they're economic, whether they're social, whether they're cultural. And when they get to the education system, they are confronted by activists who hate them. Yeah. That is the problem. And the whole thing, the whole ethos revolves around this very simplistic mechanism of oppressor and oppressed. And if you point out the facts to these people, to the educators, they will not listen to facts because, again, their whole worldview isn't based on facts.
It doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Trans women are women isn't based on any kind of fact whatsoever.
No, exactly. But again, I come back to the families issue and the fathers issue. I mean, the two parents married, particularly married, because you're more likely to stay together. Same relationship, same length of time, same income, same education background, same number of kids, you name it. If you're married, you're more likely to stay together than if you're not married. I don't know why, but them's the reality, And parents who stay together, it's the best thing you can do for your child. But the breakdown of families, and in particular, the lack of concern among the middle classes, who, by the way, nearly all get married, nearly all stay in marriages, and who then say, oh, but marriage is this sort of patriarchal issue. Women don't need it. Kids don't need it. Every family is of equal value. Yes, of course they're of equal value, but some families work better than others. I've got very close family members, very close friends who are single parents, and my God, they're the most amazing mums. I've got single parent dad friend. There is an amazing dad. But it's better for your kid if you can be together, and there are two of you not just providing, but providing that security. Kids do better. Yeah. And when so much of the debate in this country is about, no, every value is equal, every family is just as good as every other, when the stats are telling you quite categorically that's not the case. It's like banging your head against a brick wall, because the kids who are suffering the most are the kids at the bottom of the pile.
Yeah, what we want to do is give every single child, regardless of background, optimal circumstances in which they can achieve and get what they want out of life.
Put a ring on her finger. That's what I say. Put a ring on her finger.
The other thing we really need to do, and I think this is a really massively important point, is have positive male role models. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the things that we've just overlooked completely. And we've demonized men over the last 30 or 40 years. And there are aspects of masculinity that are poisonous. No one's saying there aren't.
But there are no more than there is aspects of women that are poisonous.
Absolutely. Indeed. But there are aspects of masculinity which children desperately need. Young boys desperately need. They need to look up to someone who is doing the right thing, who is providing, who is caring for their children.
Showing what a man does and what a man is and how a man behaves.
Yeah, and showing how and demonstrating how a man loves his children as well.
And indeed his partner as well. Yeah. Absolutely. I must ask you about one other story as well. Transport for London have just put a post out on Facebook. This year marks 20 years of the baby on board badge, they point out. Sadly, I was pregnant 20 years ago, and I wasn't aware of the baby on board badge at the time, and I didn't have in all the months I was pregnant, and I was very heavily pregnant, still going to work, not once did anyone offer me a seat, certainly not a man, that's for sure. But it's interesting. They said, first introduced in 2006 to help pregnant customers signal they may need a seat. The badge has become an iconic part of travelling across London. More than 80,000 badges have been given out every year, helping make journeys across London a little easier for parents-to-be. Did you notice there, and throughout this good 6 paragraphs, at no point do they mention mothers or mums? It's customers and parents-to-be. But I'm not entirely sure why a dad would need to have a baby on board badge, because he's not carrying a baby on board, is he? Because he's a bloke and he can't have a baby. But pregnant customers, I'm going to guess they are all women, and yet not mentioning the word woman at any point.
Not mentioning the word woman, not mentioning the word mother. I don't think that it's just insane. But it is part of.
You're right. Didn't mention the word mother. Yeah.
No, it didn't mention the word mother. It's part of this activist stupidity that we have, that we all have to live this ridiculous fantasy where there aren't men and there aren't women. There are just lovely people, baby-bearing people. It is stupid. We have become stupid as a society.
No, but we haven't.
Dangerous.
They
No,
have.
we haven't. They have.
They're imposing it on us. And I'm sorry, but baby on board. It's because you're a woman and you're going to be a mum, and no one else is entitled to wear those because they aren't either of those things. Philip Kisley, fantastic to speak to you, senior fellow at New Culture Forum. Thank you very much. Dump Slater, Spiked Online. I mean, this is bread and butter for our stuff, but it is infuriating, isn't it?
Yeah, it's also a good hack that I wasn't aware of. Just if I'm feeling particularly tired or under the weather, I could slap on one of those baby on board badges and ride all the way home. Well, as you said, do they actually work? That's the question, isn't it? Whether sometimes
they do. No, they do work now, but it's the fact that it's the whole like, oh, is she fat or is she pregnant thing.
Exactly.
And that's you don't have to worry. So if you
just have to take an air of chivalry in general. Does any woman you see offer?
No, but then they go, do I look fat? So you can't. Yeah, you just wait for the baby on board picture, the badge, and then it works. Anyway, 11:49. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to talk Mark Littlewood from Popular Conservatism. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:52 is the time. Everyone's now starting having conversations about the people who haven't given up seats for them on public transport. Just, come on, say, could you just all be civilised, whether you're a man or a woman, and just give up seats to people who you think might need them more than you?
I think men are the problem, though.
Women are much better at doing that.
This is one area I'm going to sound like some weepy male feminist or something, but there is a bit of actually the opposite. There's a lack of just common sense and
just chivalry.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Just be.
When you see like a man in his mid-30s racing for a seat ahead of even relatively young women, you think, what are you doing? This is embarrassing.
Who brought you up? Who's your mum watching? And would you be doing the same? Yeah. But there we are. Anyway, let's talk about something completely different. Mark Littlewood joins us now. He's the director of Popular Conservatism, and I'm quite sure as a man who gives up his seat to women of all kinds, pregnant or old or neither. Good morning to you, Mark.
Insist on standing all the time, Julia.
It's a boy. My husband just likes standing because he just pretends he's in the pub.
Yeah, very good way of doing it.
Let's talk about economics. We've got ministers being told to avoid saying, "Don't panic buy, everything's fine," because of course people start going, might have to panic buy a bit of petrol and diesel, just top up the car just before prices keep going further up. We're told there's going to be energy help, but it's going to be probably targeted at the poor, not that, what was it, 40 billion in the end that Liz Truss basically ended up handing out back in 2022. By the way, a policy supported by Labour at the time. They'd have said they'd have given more help. But we've also got Keir Starmer being criticised because he's accused petrol companies of price gouging without any evidence for it. What do you make of it all?
Well, there emphatically is price gouging at the pump, but it's not being done by the petrol forecourt. It's being done by the government. I think it's about 50%, perhaps even a bit more, of a litre of petrol is going to the government. So I've got a pretty easy solution to getting petrol prices down. That would be to slash fuel duty.
Yeah, and it's a percentage. So every time the price goes up, the government gets more money.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So there's a fairly simple solution here, isn't there, on the price gouging point? I mean, the truth of the matter is, petrol forecourts are price takers, not price makers. It is not a perfectly competitive market, but it's a pretty damn competitive market. What's a litre at the moment typically? What, £1.50, something like that?
I basically fill up the car about once every 2 months. I'm not the person to ask on this, I'm afraid.
But if you tried suddenly to charge £2, £2.50 or something, you will have competitors just right round the corner. Word spreads pretty quickly. Yeah. There are some differences in the way different forecourts and petrol stations deal with this. Some have an almost immediate response to the price of petrol over 24 hours. Some are on a time lag. So
no, hold on a minute. They have an immediate response when it goes up. They don't tend to have an immediate response when the price goes down.
I'm not so sure about that, Julia, because again, if you think you can undercut a competitor. People will flock to your services.
Yeah, but that only works where I can only think of one petrol station within a sort of a 20-minute drive of my home. If you live in the countryside, you may only have one petrol station. You haven't got competitors. It's not the same as having 3 supermarkets in the high street.
Well, that's true in some rural areas of Britain, but that's also true of the grocery store in your local village. If you haven't got a supermarket 25 miles away, there are still competitive pressures there, right? Certainly if you're in a city, even if you are in a rural area, if you tend to drive a good few hundred miles every month, you are going to go past more than one petrol station, right? I don't think you can turn any supernormal profit by jacking up the prices beyond the prevailing market rate. People are wise to it. It is a purely competitive market. There's no quality involved, right? It's just a commodity. You're not comparing brand versus brand. Nobody cares about which petrol station they shop at.
They want the cheapest
lowest price. So it's a pretty successful competitive market, with the exception of massive government intervention in it.
Yeah, people are, though, they are going to be basically, stocking up. I mean, just because as such as you can, most people using their cars every single day, they've got to keep buying the fuel. They've got to, put the lights on in their home, work the fridge, freezer, the vacuum cleaner, the washing machine. A lot of the things that are going to be going up, they've got to buy food, but they don't really have much choice about. Should the government be offering help?
I'm somewhat sceptical about it. We already have a massive bloated welfare system which is supposed to offer help. I'm rather sceptical about specific interventions around specific goods and services. I mean, what do we do if the price of food goes up? Do we start giving people vouchers to buy breakfast cereal for sake of argument? Yeah. The overall general welfare system is supposed to cope with that. There might be very, very specific isolated cases where a particular type of fuel is extremely necessary. But there's also now no money to play with, right? Yes. I mean, that's the issue. We have to get off this hook of believing that whenever there is some sort of price shock in the economy, the immediate reaction is that the government comes forward with tens of billions of pounds of money that it doesn't have to offset it. And I mean, the other interesting thing you've said about the sort of panic buying side of the ledger. Well, I rather agree that ministers shouldn't say this, because politicians are now so distrusted that if any politician comes forward and says, whatever you do, don't stock up on cornflakes, you can be certain that hundreds of thousands of people will flock to the supermarket and buy loads of cornflakes. But there genuinely isn't any reason to panic buy, because unless you know what the price of petrol is going to be in a week or a month's time, you might be losing money by filling up your car now, right? Yeah. Who knows what it's going to be next week?
And probably not a good idea to store loads of cans of petrol or diesel in your garage.
Yes, exactly. There's a risk in storage as well. Yeah. So I'm concerned about neither other than we have allowed the cost of fuel, the cost of energy more generally in the United Kingdom to hit eye-watering levels. Yeah. And it's not just one item on the ledger. It passes on all of those costs, making, manufacturing incredibly difficult, making the cost of transporting goods up and down the land ever more expensive, pressures on household bills, all of the rest of it. So rather than coming forward with what's likely to be pitiful plan to provide financial support, why not come forward with a plan to actually get the cost of energy down?
Well, do you know the answer to this? Mark, it's really obvious. We need more solar panels.
Well, that seems to be the plan at the moment.
This morning, there's a minister out suggesting we buy solar panels in Asda and we go and have a solar panel on our balcony. I don't think they realise not everyone's got a balcony. Everyone's got. I mean, I'm in a flat. I haven't got a roof. I don't own the roof. I can't put one. But apparently, that is the solution.
Well, that's a rather feeble solution, I would suggest. I mean,
I think you're being polite.
Yes, we've got to get our head around the fact that, energy prices here are about 4 times that faced by Americans. Yeah, but that makes the cost of living here eye-watering.
Indeed, but it's got nothing whatsoever to do with our renewables policy and net zero, apparently. Wink, wink. Someone's going to have to explain this to Ed Miliband at some point, but there we are. I had to watch him in the comments when we were just on air on one of the TV screens. I mean, patronising everybody with absolute lack of knowledge of any facts. Up next, I'm going to talk to Republican strategist Matt Ho about what is going on with the Iran-US conflict. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon. Welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show. If you've just been listening, this is Talk. We are the home of common sense. It's 2 minutes past midday. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or you're connected, I thank you so much for your company. If you've missed anything from the show, rip-roaring show it's been as well, do go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hey, subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be discussing more about Donald Trump's claims and Iran's counterclaims about these peace talks that apparently have taken place or are going to take place. We don't know which. We'll be talking to Republican strategist Matt Terrell about that up next. Also, Iran launching missile strikes on Tel Aviv just a day after Donald Trump said they'd had good and constructive peace talks. We've seen a huge amount of damage in the centre of Tel Aviv this time round. Plus, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, she is apparently behind the delays to that UK-French Channel Patrol deal because she's demanding payment by results terms. Well, sounds like a good idea to me because we ain't got any results so far. Plus, could Olympic legend Sebastian Coe be the next London mayor? The Tories are urging him to stand. Polling suggests he could beat Sadiq Khan. Ooh, could be interesting times ahead. All that coming up. Delighted to say, still joining me on the show is editor of Spiked Online, Tom Slater. Afternoon to you.
Afternoon.
Question we've been asking our audience today, and I'll put it once again. A lot of you getting in touch about many of the different topics we're talking about: net zero, anti-Semitism. Interestingly, completely linked up with the, I suppose, the main theme, the main topic, which is how worried are you about the Iran war continuing, but also the impact on our safety with that anti-Semitic attack on those 4 ambulances, the arson attack in Golders Green in North London yesterday, but also energy prices and the impact on our economy and our ability to defend ourselves, because you've got high energy prices, you haven't got manufacturing, you can't build the sort of hardware you need to protect you this country back here in Britain. Tell us how worried you are, tell us why you're worried, why you're not worried, maybe you're very relaxed about it. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk and your message to 87222. You can get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls to charge of the national rate and text cost 1 standard network rate message. Tom Slater, just very briefly, obviously we've been discussing a lot about what's going on at home, energy bills and the like, but actually a lot of this is going to depend on what the heck is happening in Washington DC, what is happening in Tehran, and what may be happening in Pakistan over the next few days, where we're told there will be some peace talks happening, but we're still not sure whether the sort of constructive conversations that Donald Trump claimed to have been having with a senior figure in the Iranian regime have ever actually happened, are we?
Not at all. We're totally in the dark, as we've been throughout this entire conflict, and it's very hard to work out whether or not this is genius gamesmanship or is all over the place like a shopping trolley, Donald Trump. It's, depends on your perspective on the man, it seems like, more than anything else. It's clear, I think, that he is getting cold feet about this conflict. This is the thing about Donald Trump. People will present him as kind of crazed and he's pursuing this war because he's always had very much one eye on the polls and on the markets. That's one way in which he marks his card, shall we say. And because of the fact that this war is still pretty unpopular in America, although not as unpopular with his base as some people are making out, and also the fact that it's already having tremendous economic impact. And really, that's just the beginning of the whirlwind that will be reaped as a consequence of all of this. I think it's clear that he's getting cold feet. Whether or not these negotiations are what they say they are is a different question.
Brilliant. Well, we'll come back to you, get your response to what my next guest has to say. I'm delighted to welcome Matt Terrell to the show for the first time. He's a Republican strategist. He's also former chief of staff to Marco Rubio back in 2016. Marco Rubio, of course, now the current Secretary of State for the United States. A very good afternoon to you, Matt.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us. I suppose first question, your contact with the Secretary of State, for goodness sake. I mean, I'm hoping you're still on speaking terms. Have there been constructive talks, as claimed by the American president, with Iran, given that he's the leader, the Iranian leader he claims he's spoken with is the leader of the Iranian parliament, and he's put a message on X to say, you haven't been speaking to me. What's going on?
Well, I'm not one to believe the Iranians. The Iranian regime has lied time and time again. They've lied about their nuclear program. They've lied about the distance their missile can go. We saw that with respect to Diego Garcia strikes. So, look, I think what we're seeing right now, though, by President Trump is the art of the deal. And I think he is somebody who wants to negotiate with anybody and go to the table with anybody to have discussion. But, the truth is the Iranian regime is not negotiating in good faith up until this point. However, we are at a different point right now. And I do think the regime recognizes to some degree that there needs to be an off-ramp. But with that said, what we've seen out of this regime is that they continue and don't quit. We saw during the 12-day war back in June that on the heels of the strikes that the United States conducted in terms of nuclear facilities, Iran continued to build up on the heels of those strikes their military capabilities. They didn't stop. And so that's the key component here.
But Donald Trump claimed at the time of the 12-day war and those strikes on nuclear facilities that actually, he'd completely destroyed all of the Iranian nuclear capability, and it's obvious that was not the case. We wouldn't be where we are right now. So you claiming this is effectively, this is a game of 4D chess by the American president. So he makes a threat about taking out energy infrastructure in Iran if the Straits of Hormuz are not opened by what would have been midnight last night UK time, and then the talks start and this was just basically his starting negotiating position, and there actually is a lot more going on behind the scenes than we think, or I mean, because you say Iran isn't negotiating good faith. I suppose they could argue neither was America, because they were in negotiations when those initial airstrikes from Israel and America began.
Well, first, yeah, but to your point, though, Iran has consistently lied. I mean, look, the truth is you cannot negotiate with liars. But with that said, we are at a different point right now. And, to President Trump's credit, he's very transparent. Like him or not, agree with him or not, he's an extremely transparent individual, and he's been transparent right now about what he needs to see from the regime. Part of that, obviously, is them stopping their nuclear capabilities, handing over enrichment, allowing monitors, if you will, to go in, and then, of course, opening the Strait of Hormuz. And so that's the bigger component here right now, is the Strait, and that's something that obviously needs to be tackled here. But look, we got a few days left here for the Iranian leadership to make a decision, but it's really kind of been unclear who's leading Iran. I mean, President Trump and the United States military, in coordination with Israel, have taken out level by level Iranian leadership. That's a big challenge right now, I think, for Iran. Look, Iran is on their heels right now.
Yep.
The regime is on their heels. And so, look, the truth is, I think President Trump is trying to get to a place where he can end this war. But President Trump, as we've seen with Venezuela and other conflicts, he does not bluff. The Iranian regime is finding out right now what the Trump doctrine is all about, and that is mess around and find out. I highly encourage the regime to come to the table here and negotiate in good faith.
But the trouble with that, and again, is not only you can't negotiate with liars, you also can't negotiate with, theocratic, nihilistic, lunatic regimes, which is basically what the mullahs in Iran are. The question is, what would victory look like? There's been a lot of debate, I think, American media and indeed British media about what the war aims were. Now, Donald Trump outlined these 4 weeks ago at Mar-a-Lago, didn't he, what these war aims were? And they didn't include regime change, other than the opportunity for the Iranian people to rise up and change their country's leadership. So what would that a victory look like, where America could walk away and say, job done, thank you very much, we did the right thing?
Well, I think right now America has a victory here in terms of what they've done. I mean, look, the truth is Iran is on their heels. We have decimated their capabilities thus far to put forward a nuclear weapon. But with that said, it's not about Iran right now not having a nuclear weapon today. It's ensuring they cannot have a nuclear weapon in the days, weeks, months, and years to come. And so right now, I think what victory looks like is ensuring that we decimate Iran's capabilities ever to have a nuclear weapon again. Look, this has been the biggest state sponsor of terrorism. The men and women of the United States military, along with Israel forces, have done an incredible job here, launching a lot of strikes that we've seen. But beyond that, look, it does come to ending the conflict. And I do think it comes down to President Trump has been very clear about the exact criteria that needs to be met here. And we'll see what happens with that. But I think a case study that can be used here to see what potentially could happen next is Venezuela. We saw in Venezuela President Trump work and put in place, if you will, leadership there that has been working with the United States in a cooperative manner. We could potentially see that, hopefully.
But that's such a different country. I mean, quite apart from the fact it's the American sphere of influence, and you haven't got the Islamist fanatical element. It's a narco-terrorist, a narco-criminal state rather than a fanatical, Islamist fundamentalist state. With the IRGC, the huge military might of Iran, the huge, the IRGC's power in 120,000 of these sort of fanatical soldiers. It's a very, very different thing from a narco state that basically you can buy everyone off because everyone's motivated by money and not by a theological desire to destroy Israel, kill every Jew, and destroy the West.
To your point, they are very different countries and situations there. But look, it ultimately comes down to in Iran. President Trump has been clear that it's going to be up to the people of Iran ultimately to rise up and take control of their government. That's key. I think what President Trump has done here is given the people of Iran the ability to do exactly that. He's done what no other U.S. president has done before. And I don't really view this as just launching a war. I view this as President Trump opening a door for the people of Iran to have an opportunity to walk through that door and take back their country. Obviously, more work needs to be done to create the environment for Iranian people to safely rise up and do that. But obviously, we're seeing that work be done. We're seeing
can that be done without boots on the ground? And although we've got this talk about U.S. Marines maybe landing on Carg Island to try and seize control of the Strait of Hormuz, that's very different. I mean, it is not even within anyone's game plan right now for American troops on the ground to seize Iran.
Well, we'll see what President Trump does. Look, first of all, he's, as we know, somebody who does not tell the world what he's going to do. This is not, if you will, President Biden or other presidents who have told the world what their strategy will be on military. I think President Trump is going to keep that close hold. But look, Carg Island obviously is another component here that could take shape in terms of decimating even further Iran's economic capabilities. Obviously, that's a huge component there. So look, it comes down to this. There needs to be an off-ramp for the regime here. I think President Trump is trying to get to a place here where he gives them the ability to have that off-ramp, but they've got to be willing to work with the United States here. Thus far, we have not seen the regime operate or negotiate in good faith. We'll see what takes shape here. Obviously, these strikes that have been conducted over the past few weeks truly have been decimating Iran's capabilities, sinking their navy, decimating their abilities in the air. That's been mission critical here.
Well, an off-ramp for the Iranians and the Americans, but also it's not just take two to tango, it takes three to tango in this case. We've also got the Israelis and the Israeli government having very different war aims from the Americans in terms of the existential threat posed to them by Iran. And Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, has vowed that Israel will keep on bombing Iran until the threat from that regime to the Israeli people via not just their own missiles on Tel Aviv, as we saw last night, but also their attacks from Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis as well, until they end. It might in the end be easier for Donald Trump to rein back in Iran more so than Israel. What would you say to that?
Well, I think the advantage that President Trump has with the Prime Minister of Israel is they have a great relationship. Yeah. I mean, look, President Trump has spent years cultivating that relationship. Obviously, we've seen the president host the prime minister here in Washington at the White House. So that work has been put in place. To have a good alliance, you have to have a good relationship with that leadership. And that's exactly what you have here between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump. So I don't think people should be worried about that. I think these two leaders are very much in sync. Obviously, I'd love to see what takes shape here, our next steps here to finalize, hopefully, the end of this war. But I do think that these leaders are very much in sync. I think we've seen that time again, that they're going to be working hand in hand here, if you will, to hopefully conclude this war soon.
Donald Trump isn't the first American president to get elected on a ticket where he wants to be isolationist, not just make America great again, America first, America only, really, not wanting to get involved in foreign wars, keeping American troops out of the Middle East and elsewhere. We know a lot of people in America are very unhappy about this war. We know a lot of people in Britain, bizarrely, not big fans of Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, who somehow by accident dithered his way into what many believe to be the right decision. I disagree with them on this one, but every American president who says he's going to be isolationist never ends up getting that option, actually, because America is such an important player in the world that often isn't an option. But we've seen the damage to Donald Trump in the polls. We've got the midterm elections coming up in November. We've seen the damage in the markets. Lots of talk about, actually, a lot of his statements the last couple of days have been to do with, the price of oil rather than, and the polling, rather than actually a war tactic. How big a concern is that for the Republicans generally and people like Marco Rubio, who, come the next American presidential election, would be somebody who'd be expected to stand for that Republican nomination?
Well, what goes down can go back up in terms of oil prices, in terms of, the poll numbers. Look, I think, the truth is this. President Trump entered this conflict, this war, with about a 41% approval rating. Today, his approval rating remains the same at 41%. That's CNN polling. The mega base is 100% behind him, according to CNN polling. But as for gas prices, I think the administration has done a good job of managing the American people that, look, this is a temporary situation here. And look, I think the administration did the right course on trying to take proactive steps to reduce the cost of gas prices, opening up a pipeline, if you will, here in California and the United States. Secretary Bessent obviously relieving restrictions, if you will, sanctions temporarily on Iranian sanctioned oil, trying to get that into the market, 140 million barrels. So the reality is it's about the actions you take as a president. And look, a week is a lifetime in politics. We have a lot of weeks to go between now and the midterm elections, and many to go before 2028. A lot can happen, but the truth is, yes, the American people want to see gas prices down. And the advantage that President Trump has had is that he has seen gas prices go down under his second term here, particularly compared to President Biden when gas prices were north of $5 per gallon. So look, we're going to see where that all goes here. But obviously, to your point, the economic components of this, whether it's the price of gas or price of fertilizer, that's important to Americans, and obviously I think the administration recognizes that and is addressing that.
Just say Americans would absolutely lose their minds if they saw the price of gas, as you call it here. Just finally, one quick question. Has what's happened, the dithering and the refusal initially to allow the US Air Forces to use Diego Garcia for initial strikes in Iran, has that basically damaged long-term the relationship, the special relationship we often call it, between the US and the UK?
I don't think it's damaged the relationship between the United States and the UK. You know, the U.S. people and I think the UK people recognize a special alliance and friendship and partnership that both countries have. But as it relates to Prime Minister Starmer, President Trump was not shy about expressing his disapproval of what Prime Minister Starmer has done here, not just on Diego Garcia, but frankly, I think, I'll let President Trump speak for himself, but having a greater force, if you will, and greater presence by the UK under Prime Minister Starmer. But look, the truth is, I think that the recent launch of missiles potentially reaching Diego Garcia, close to reaching Diego Garcia and striking Diego Garcia, was really a wake-up call here. Yeah. The Iranian regime has lied time and again. They lied about the length, if you will, the distance their missiles could go. That was a direct threat to our joint bases there, the UK-US joint bases at Diego Garcia. I would expect it to be a wake-up call to Prime Minister Starmer, and certainly I think it's a wake-up call to the world about the real threat that this regime has presented to the world, not just to the Middle East, but to nations around the world, particularly Europe, where we look at the distance that these missile capabilities could go.
Absolutely. Really good to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us, Matt Terrell. He's a Republican strategist. He's also a former Chief of Staff to the current Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Tom Slater, interesting to hear from him. I mean, very much, I would say, sort of pushing, I suppose the party line, the White House line there, that this is all a strategy. You can't believe the Iranians, but you can trust Donald Trump, and he's not giving anything away. I mean, I'm wondering if he's being a bit charitable to Donald Trump there.
I think so. I think that the issue that we've had so far is that we've had various sort of conflicting messages. There were various different justifications for this conflict when it was first launched. And look, you shouldn't expect any president of the United States engaged in a conflict like this to give you a clear play-by-play, to make everything absolutely clear. But even from the kind of internal reporting, the kind of well-sourced Washington journalists, the people who do speak to the spooks and the people who actually run things behind the scenes, the picture you get is not one of a grand strategy being exacted. And one hopes that this is going to meet the objectives that were set for it. I think everyone can accept that Iran, or should accept that Iran is a threat. But just because a country is a threat doesn't mean that your prescribed solution is going to work, is not going to get you bogged down. And that's why, whilst war is sometimes necessary, there also have to be a clear sense of why you're getting into it, for what reasons, and what you're willing to take in response, and that's not always.
But also, again, as we, getting bogged down, and I liked the fact they were saying, look, it's not about regime change. I mean, I don't think Donald Trump should have promised help to Iranian people who were protesting in January and then not provided it. I think to allow 30,000, 40,000 people to be slaughtered, and since many people executed by the Iranian regime, when basically he promised help was coming. If you slaughter people on the streets, and we're going to come in, and he didn't. I mean, I think that was a moral suicide there. But it's not his job. It's not the Americans' job to do that. But I just want to know what victory looks like. I know what it looks like for the Israelis. Oh, we are no longer being bombed and targeted and having a threat to our very existence by the Iranian regime or Iranian-backed terrorists. That's a really clear, worthwhile perspective. I've got no issue with that whatsoever. But they're the only people who've been keeping Iran sort of, contained as it is for many years. But for the Americans, it's a very, very different matter. There's really no belief right now that they are going to stop the nuclear development, or they've been able to do so.
Yeah, no, especially because so many times we've been told that it was obliterated.
It was obliterated last time round,
It's been obliterated many times now, and this is the problem. The extent to which Donald Trump's whole kind of foreign policy has been premised on the idea that he's not going to repeat the mistakes of the recent past. But there's a lot of mistakes of the recent past which feels like they are being repeated. The kind of mission accomplished moment. We've had about 3 of those in the past couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And you can't help but feel that here there is the potential for him to get bogged down in precisely the way that he criticised previous governments. This is not like Venezuela. This is not like going after the Houthis. This is not like going in and dropping the mother of all bombs on Afghanistan to degrade some terrorists. This is a committed terrorist state which is in it for the long haul,
and which is a huge state with a population of, what, 90 million, with a huge security apparatus, huge funding. I mean, you know...
and which has its boot on the neck of global oil and gas supplies.
Yeah, exactly. This is a rather different matter. I have a funny feeling that a lot of this stuff wasn't thought through. Otherwise, for instance, the US Marines would already have been in place ready to take Kharg Island, or they would have secured the Strait of Hormuz already. That's what my concern is. I've got no problem with the war aims. I've got no problem with America taking this action. My issue is, did you think it through? And I'm very worried. I understand that Donald Trump doesn't think things through. Sorry, even if you're his biggest fan in the world, you can't honestly think he thinks things through. But I'd like to think that the people around him, like Rubio and others, do think stuff through. Maybe not Hegseth so much, but definitely Rubio. He's a very sharp guy. That actually, there are people around, the strategists, who would have had stuff in place, and I'm bloody worried they don't. But there we are. Just a little bit of breaking news for you. It's just a small matter, not World War III. So, girl guiding. As a result of that announcement, of course, which we had from the Supreme Court in April last year, coming up to the anniversary of that, government, Parliament, huge number of local councils, hospitals have completely failed to actually abide by the ruling there that any facilities, any organisation, any services produced for girls and women could not be open to people who called themselves girls and women when they weren't, so trans-identifying men. But the last announcement last December, they announced that membership would be restricted to girls and young women, what with it being girl guiding. And they have just issued an announcement saying transgender girls, i.e. boys, who completely wrongly have been told that they are born in the wrong body and actually are not and are actually boys, they must leave girl guiding by this September the 6th. I don't know why it hasn't already happened, but good on them for standing firm. You've got ordinary members of the public behind you, girl guiding. Ignore the sort of 25 activists who are screaming at you and telling you you're bad people. This is about protecting young girls in particular. 12:25 is the time we're going to get to your calls on everything we're talking about: net zero, Iran, anti-Semitism, you name it. You want to talk about girl guiding? Get in touch. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
Brand new for 2026. It's going to be the only way to start your day. It's the home of common sense. It's where the nation can come to speak about the day's news. It's the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show. You know who you are. You get up, you graft, you work hard. I'm here for you. We want to hear your side. Promise you one thing. It is where the nation can and will come to talk. Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show, weekdays from 6 a.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk the Home of Common Sense. Coming up to 12:28. Let's get to your calls. 0344 499 1000 for you to have your say on all the big topics we're talking about today. Vernon is rung in. He's in Staffordshire. Vernon, you want to talk about net zero and, of course, the impact of everything from net zero on defence, economy and everything.
Indeed, Julia. How frightening that Ed Miliband still doesn't get it. It's not all about the cost of energy.
Yeah.
That's obviously very important. It's about energy independence. Personally, I don't believe what he's saying.
Yeah.
I don't believe anything of him. Because it's the same with the car industry, with electric cars and things.
Yeah.
Man just tells lies.
Yeah.
The reality of it is that we need energy independence. And if we have the fields in the North Sea, which everyone says we do have, then we have no issue, do we? Whilst war breaks out, we can take care of our needs.
No, it's the international market. Won't make any difference, Vernon, he keeps telling us.
Well, there's a word, Julia, and I'll be very careful. It's called balderdash. He's just not telling the truth.
But especially as he seems to be under the illusion, as a lot of activists do, your Gretas and others who simply don't understand any of this stuff. This idea that we can go to this sort of fossil fuel, okay, net zero. But when he says net zero, I mean, you can't run all the cars, you can't run with tiny fraction of cars and transport and trains and things are run on electricity. We don't have the electricity supply, we don't have the network, we haven't got the storage for all of this stuff for solar and wind. He must know all this. He's in the job as net zero and energy secretary, for goodness sake. But at the same, we're still using fossil fuels, but we're importing them from Norway, who are getting them from the same fields that we are no longer allowed to explore and take energy from.
Do you think Norway is selling to us at no cost? Do you think they're not making any money? It's just for the birds. It's complete idiots. You know, the man's a fool. My real reason for calling Julia this morning is Golders Green.
Yeah.
How this country and how the country's politicians have treated the Jewish community, the Jewish people, they should all hang their heads in shame. Because this is just the start, Julia. And I don't believe for 1 minute this is Iran, because it's just too convenient. These are from people that live within us. They live within London.
Or they can. It'll be people who live here, but who have links with.
It's too convenient to blame Iran. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we have an element within this country that really are bad people, and this is the start. If you import the third world, why on earth would you not think the third world is going to... There are people here, Julia, that hate you and I.
Oh, yeah.
The reality of it is they will think nothing of killing and causing chaos on the streets.
Mm-hmm.
And my words to the Jewish community is, I'm very sorry. I think it's appalling what my country has done. My Prime Minister, who's married to a Jewish lady, he should stand down just for incompetence on that matter alone.
Yeah.
And there are people that live within who are going to do damage. I mean, it's no coincidence, Julia, is it, that 95% of those on the terror
watch list,
they have an association with Islam.
They're Islamists.
It's a fact.
Yeah.
We can't talk about it.
Well, there's a big march against the far right at the weekend. Apparently the far right's the problem.
Where's the far left, Julia? Yeah. What's happened? Why isn't there a court this morning parading all of these nasty people? Because we found the far right people within an hour, didn't we?
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree with you more on all those fronts. And as you say, everyone's talking the good game, but actually it's action that we need. It really is. Vernon, thank you for that. Very thoughtful call, both topics. Joan is in Sunderland. Joan, you want to talk about this report out from the Centre for Social Justice, basically backing up a report carried out by Lord Sewell himself 5 years ago, basically saying that, it's white working class boys who are at the bottom of the pile, not those of different of minority ethnic groups who we were constantly being told are suffering from racism here.
Yes, hello.
Hello.
I think part of the problem as well is this DEI rubbish.
Yeah.
Take the fact that the Royal Air Force was asking for pilots.
Yeah.
White need not apply.
Yeah.
Surely skill should apply. West Yorkshire Police, white need not apply.
Yeah.
Can you just imagine what would happen if there was the same thing here and it said blacks need not apply, Muslims need not apply, all hell would break loose.
Absolutely. It's just
really
extraordinary.
would.
And I've never understood this. So we're told diversity is our strength and is strength for any organisation. But if that's the case, then companies that don't hire a lot of women or people from ethnic minorities or gay people or trans people, they won't do financially as well, and that would be their choice. I'm opposed to quotas or training schemes specifically for one group or another group, for whether it's women, whether it's gay people, whether it's black people, whether it's Muslims, whether it's white people. I don't care. Everything needs to be done on merit, and if a certain group is doing badly in society generally, we need to look at all the reasons. And as we've discovered from these reports, it's very rarely about racism, although that does exist. It's nearly always about family breakdown, lack of aspiration, poor education, and and the like. That's the issue. Why don't we tackle the real problems?
I know, but can I say one more thing? Julia, could I please have my country back? I am absolutely disgusted at what's happening with this anti-Semitic race hate. Have we always had this hatred in our country, or have we imported it? It's just absolutely terrible. We are not allowed to talk about anything because suddenly criticism has become racism.
Yeah.
Why don't we as a people, let us all sit down and think and just say, not in my name. I do not want to live in a country like this with so much hate, so much discrimination. You can no longer open your mouth and say something which usually is the truth.
Yeah.
And I am so worried about this country. I am absolutely terrified of the way we are going. And ordinary people need to wake up, smell the coffee, and just say, enough is enough.
Amen to every single word of that, Joan, and I'm sure an awful lot of our audience were feeling exactly the same way as well. Thank you for that, Tom Slater. I mean, that's the reality, isn't it? A lot of people waking up to it. And we talk about the anti-Semitism thing. I'm sorry, there have always been anti-Semitic people. It's an age-old, it's centuries old, that form of racism. But we've also imported it en masse from the third world. When you import a load of people from the Middle East and from Pakistan and countries like that, where anti-Semitism is the norm. It is embedded in the country's entire psyche. Then, of course, what a surprise you've brought it here.
And this is one of the reasons it hasn't been dealt with. Is because if you look at the issue of anti-Semitism, not just in Britain, large parts of Western Europe, it's coming from other minorities, which gives the left conniptions. It doesn't fit the script. The British Muslim community, much higher levels of belief in anti-Semitic tropes and so on and so forth.
Support for Iran, we saw that poll this week.
Which is just a fact. Now, of course, how we deal with that becomes a secondary question, but we need to accept that if you're genuinely opposed to racism in all of its forms, let alone the world's oldest racism, which has been the most destructive, genocidal and deranging over many, many centuries, then you have to stand up to this. Just because of the fact that it doesn't come in the package that you'd prefer, the cowardice and the idiocy that confronts this issue is terrible, and British Jews are having to pay the price for our own refusal to deal with this.
Absolutely. We're going to take a quick break and then we are going to be talking about what is going on with laughable attempts to stop huge number of migrants arriving illegally on those Channel boats. There's at the end of this month, which is coming up in just a week's time, we are going to see the end of that French migrant deal, where basically we pay hundreds of millions of pounds of our taxpayers' money to the French to stop the boats. It's going terribly well so far. Apparently a new deal is on the cards, but it's being held up by the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood. Apparently she's demanding payment based on results. Well, that would be a fine thing. It will also save us a lot of money because the results are so bad. It probably only costs us a couple of quid. So maybe we'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon. 12:39 is the time. Let's go to my next guest now, Guy Dampier. He's a senior researcher on nationhood at the Prosperity Institute. A very good afternoon to you, Guy.
Good afternoon. Glad to be here.
Thank you very much for joining us. I want to talk to you about something which is normally bread and butter on our station, but it's a bit further down the news list just this week, certainly, and that is channel migrants. I mean, whenever the weather's nice, we just see a whole load of people turning up on those dinghies. Of course, they are desperate to flee the wonderfully peaceful, lovely country with fine cheese and wine of France. But we've been paying, I think, 375 million quid a year to the French authorities to stop a lot of those boats. They claim they do stop an awful lot, but let's face it, not enough. But that deal comes to an end in just about a week's time, doesn't it? And we're told that today that actually these patrols by the French, a new deal is on the cards, but it's being held up by the Home Secretary. What's going on?
Well, it's a good point. So we've had this deal for a couple of years now. And when we started, the French were stopping about 50% of migrants coming. It's now down to 37%. So we've been paying them and they've been getting worse at it, which is not a good sign. And apparently what the Home Secretary wants is she said that she wants to pay by results. So she said, we'll do a deal, we'll extend it, we'll give you the money, but we don't want 37%, we don't even want 50%, we want something like 80%. And the French have basically said, we don't like being told what to do, and we're not going to. And so the deal is going down to the wire, as they say. And if it does stop, then the danger, of course, is that stopping 37% is still quite a chunk of people. So we'll see a significant increase in the number of people crossing the channel and getting here.
I'm sure we'd see that either way anyway, don't we? Because let's face it, it's always down to the weather more than anything, any government policy that's announced. The thing is, the French have rather got us over a barrel, haven't they? Because they don't really care. Now, I'm of the view they're quite wrong, and that actually if they did basically accept immediate returns and actually did proper patrols, stop people getting on the boats in the first place, but also just accept people back, basically that route through France to get to the Channel coast, to get to Britain, would basically be no longer needed. And I think that lots of people wouldn't go to France because they leave France, don't they? Because it's actually not very hospitable to a lot of these migrants. They only in France to get to Britain. I think they're basically cutting off their own noses despite their face by not helping us. But they could just say, well, fine, we won't patrol, we won't get your money. What do we care? We haven't got a negotiating position here.
Well, it's very tricky. I mean, so we pay about 2/3 of the bill for covering the coast of northern France. So they are still covering a third of it. And it does still cause a lot of problems for people, French people in the coast. You know, they've still got all these migrant camps. They've got people wandering around. They do have to deal with those difficulties. But as you say, fundamentally, if the people choose to come to Britain, they're fine with it because that means that the costs pass to us and they've got less to deal with. Obviously, they want to have some form of relationship with us. And I think if they decided to play complete hardball, we could, of course, cause difficulties in reverse. But nobody completely wants to cause problems with the borders in between. You know, they rather like coming here, we rather like going there to enjoy the wine and the cheese that the migrants obviously find so intolerable. So it is a difficult situation, but the cards are largely in French hands, which is why we have this uneven deal. It's why we're paying 2/3.
For them to do their job. I mean, but couldn't I? A lot of people would like to do. We literally just, you know, we just take them back and just drop them in French waters. Now, of course, you know, human rights lot will be all opposed to that. This government certainly isn't doing it. I mean, it leaves an open borders. I'm surprised it's even wanting to have this deal. But you know, if at the very least we patrolled the middle of the channel and basically went, fine, we're patrolling, but instead of the French Coast Guard calling the British Coast Guard or RNLI to go and rescue these boats, we stopped them getting over into the British Channel waters and said, no, there you go, they're your problem, we're going off now. I mean, is there any chance of any of that happening? Because, of course, you realise that, you know, if one person drowns, we know perfectly well, then everything will kick off. But isn't that partly the answer, to make it France's problem again and then they deal with it?
You could. There's two ways of doing it. One is you could use Coast Guard cutters, things like that, and do pushbacks. Now, the problem with doing pushbacks is that was made illegal by a decision from the European, basically based on the ECHR. So the European Court ruled you were not allowed to do that. That goes back to when the Greeks were trying to do those when the migration crisis kicked off in about 2015. So we would be found against in that court, and we probably would be found against even before using the Human Rights Act. So that is our big problem on doing that. The second one, you could try doing it with robots. You could do it with drone vehicles. That would have a lower level of risk and somewhat more control. But again, you run afoul of international law. So long as you're party to those and you know they're not going to be reformable. So as long as you are a signatory, that's your problem. You know, we can't do it. And the French know that.
Yep.
And so they have to just let it happen.
I mean, we're never going to stop this problem, are we? Until somewhere else becomes more enticing. Because we've always got the English language, which is often a second language for a lot of people, or you know, so many people who are already here. Well, otherwise, this is never going to be over. Doesn't matter what any politician gets elected saying. I thought even reform, even if Nigel Farage got in at the next election, I just can't see this is something that we are going to be able to resolve in the short term.
Oh, I'm a little bit more positive. I think we can do this. I think you've got one fundamental problem, which is international law. If you tackle that, then you can turn these people around and you can deport them instantly.
That's the key. Well, you're right.
That's the key.
You're interned. You get sent home. It's just not worth the price. Well, fingers crossed. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Thank you very much indeed, Guy Dampier from the Prosperity Institute. Just to get you up to date on the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, she's been speaking in the House of Commons and apparently her abacus is working this week. She's insisted that ending the war in Iran was the best way to protect households from the cost of living. She said it remains the case the best way to protect families and finances is rapid de-escalation of this conflict. Oh, brilliant. I mean, brilliant. Fantastic analysis, Rachel. Really appreciate that. But she's insisted she's going to stick to her fiscal rules despite the war in Iran. That's taxes basically covering day-to-day spending in the UK. These are self-imposed rules. But she's paid tribute to the armed forces and those affected by the conflict in the Middle East. And she told MPs the full economic impact of the war remains uncertain, but it makes our economic plan even more important to build prosperity that is secure and resilient, to bear down on the cost of living and protect the public finances, delivered through our ironclad fiscal rules. And today I will set out further action that I am taking. I feel very, very reassured by that. Do you not, Tom?
Oh, absolutely. A cloud has lifted. And thank God we've got Rachel there in post at a difficult time like this. She's been
alongside another decisive leader, you know, in the Prime Minister.
It's an embarrassment of riches at the top of this government at the moment, and I, for one, would not want anyone else leading us through this crisis than those two who've done more U-turns than Dyspraxic on his first driving lesson. They are. It's a horror show that they are there right now. I mean, they would have been terrible even in good times, but the economy was shaky enough before this war kicked off. We all knew that, and now more of the same, apparently. This only proves that the plan is working.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, you get hit by you know, COVID outbreak. You get hit by Ukraine war and things like. You get hit by the Iran conflict. You know, governments, they're things that happen outside your control. But the point of being a sensible government, and also that first-class civil service we hear so much about, is that you're supposed to plan for these sort of eventualities. And hey, here's an idea: follow pandemic planning. That would have helped. But also to have resilience, to have more than 2 days gas storage in place. To be drilling and making sure you've got fossil fuels and you're fracking and all, and to have some money in reserve and not handing it all out on 20-year-olds who claim they're anxious on a Monday morning because they'd rather watch something on Netflix. I mean, for the love of God, ultimately this does always come down to governments abjectly, and it's the last lot and this lot abjectly failing to do the job they are well paid to do. Right, we're going to go to a quick break. Could someone who could be in a rather senior job very soon be Sebastian Coe? The Olympic legend is possibly being lined up as a possible Tory candidate for the London mayorship. We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
2026. It's going to be the only way to start your day. It's the home of common sense. It's where the nation can come to speak about the day's news. It's the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show. You know who you are. You get up, you graft, you work hard. I'm here for you. We want to hear your side. Promise you one thing. It is where the nation can and will come to talk. The Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show, weekdays from 6 a.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon, 12:50 is the time. Last topic of the hour before we hand over to Ian Collins, taking over from 1 o'clock. And let's talk about London mayoral race. The next mayoral race for London, they've got local elections in the capital city coming up in May. The actual race for the to be London mayor is not until 2028. We've had Layla Cunningham of Reform, who's going to be standing. Everyone is expecting Sadiq Khan's going to go for, what would it be? What, his fourth term? I think he's been in office again and again and again. But now the Tories are urging Olympic legend Sebastian Coe to enter the race. New polling, they say, suggests that Sadiq Khan could actually be beaten by him. Well, let's talk about this with the Conservative London Assembly member, Andrew Boff. Very good afternoon to you, Andrew.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for joining us. Well, private polling apparently conducted for Tory backers found that the former Olympic champion, who of course has been rather busy, running athletics and running for the International Olympic Committee and the like, that he is actually somebody who could be more popular than Sadiq Khan and win that race. I like Sebastian Coe. He seems to talk a lot of sense, but I have to say, I'd be very surprised right now that in London you could see a Tory mayor win, whoever the candidate was.
Well, of course, the Tory can win in London because the Tory has won before.
Things things have changed a lot since Boris Johnson was mayor of London.
Well, they've changed a lot since Seb Coe did the Olympics, and they keep digging this story up every time, about Seb Coe, and every time he says he's not got the slightest interest in standing for as London mayor, and also he's very, very busy in the international stage with his with sports. So it's not going to happen really.
Yeah, I have to say, I would be surprised if he would step away from the role he's got into that campaign. There's also an issue, isn't there, with the voting system in reality, which is this. Is it single transferable vote?
It's
not single. That's it. So, but basically, you get two candidates. You can name two candidates. You name your first candidate and your second preference. So basically, if your first candidate drops out, then your second preference come forward. There's no doubt at all, given the demographic makeup and recent voting patterns in London, that across the whole of London, we see central London and outer London often voting very differently, that this does benefit candidates on the left. So even if we say we saw a green surge in London, as we've seen across the country, their second preference is unlikely to be the Conservative.
That's not quite true. That's
really?
not quite true. Not quite true. What the voting system benefits is somebody who it doesn't benefit is somebody who's firmly on the right or firmly on the left. It actually benefits those people who grasp the centre ground, because London is a very centre city in that respect. And what we need is a candidate who's going to be able to appeal not just the Conservatives, not just to the right, but also the centre as well. And indeed, that is how Boris Johnson won in 2008. If you looked at it, his manifesto, you would be hard pushed to find what could be described as hard right policies in there.
Yeah.
And
he was never
many
hard
of them
right.
No, he never was. And very environmental, very
all the
interventionist.
Nonsense. Yes, all the nonsense.
Very interventionist. But the point is, Julia, he got elected.
He did get elected, but I do think the demographics of this city have changed fundamentally since that time. Hugely, hugely. I mean, in terms of candidates, no doubt at all, Susan Hall, I'm sure she's a very nice lady, but she did not set the world alight. And this is, I'm sorry, I've travelled around the world a lot. I've been to some great cities. I still have the view that London is the greatest city on planet Earth in terms of everything that it has to offer. Its beauty, its its political centre, its economic centre.
You're preaching to the choir.
Yeah, well, it's a cultural centre. My parents were born in London. I wasn't born in London, but I've made London certainly my home. I know there are other great cities in our great country, but I think London has got it all. we should be having sort of, seriously, credible, well-known figures wanting to run this city, shouldn't we?
No.
Why not?
Well known. I mean, people are obsessed with media. Why not just stick up somebody who's won Love Island? Who's, I mean,
I don't mean that.
It's an absolutely.
I don't want someone who's
ridiculous.
been on the telly. I just want someone who's credible.
What you start with is somebody who knows what they're doing. People with the experience of running government in London, and people who are going to be able to pull all the right levers. And the trouble is, none of the putative candidates that have been put forward in the past, very few of them, have actually known how to change things in London for the better. There's exceptions. Susan Hall is massively experienced, good friend of mine, and
yeah, but she didn't win the election, and she isn't. If she ran again, she wouldn't again either.
No, she didn't, and I think it's predominantly because Susan is undeniably a conservative, but perhaps what she wasn't able to do was appeal to those many non-conservative voters who we need to persuade, and that's the kind of candidate that we need.
Can I ask you about something just completely different? Transport for London have put out a Facebook post about marking 20 years of the baby on board badge, sadly not available when I was heavily pregnant with my daughter. But basically it says it wants to help pregnant customers signal they may need a seat. And it also talks about how it's going to make life a little easier for parents to be. Key thing it talks about 80,000 badges given out every year. I think it's been a fantastic development, mainly because people in London and largely in this country are just too sodding rude and thoughtless and selfish to give up their seats to people who need them, obviously. I also don't want to make the embarrassment, is she fat or is she pregnant? I mean, OK, people have that concern. But this Facebook announcement, it talks about pregnant customers, talks about parents-to-be. The only people who are pregnant are women. Parents-to-be, it's not parents-to-be. There's no man who's carrying a baby inside his body. It's a mother who is doing that. This manages not to mention the word woman or mother at any point in this Facebook post. What do you say about that?
Julia, why are you so triggered by it?
Triggered? Because I'm a woman and I was pregnant and I didn't have one of these badges. I'm not triggered by anything.
Really
I'm annoyed.
Yeah, you are annoyed, aren't you? And I don't know why you're being annoyed. It's a perfectly reasonable statement that seems to indicate that anybody who's pregnant...
Who's anybody?
Well, anybody who's pregnant.
So any woman?
Well, yeah.
Well, no, why wouldn't you say any woman?
Any woman or somebody who's changed their gender.
Well, no, someone who's changed their gender is still a woman. You're a woman. The only people who can get pregnant are women, right? Did your mother not teach you the birds and the bees? Who can have a baby, a man or a woman?
Why are you upset? Why are you upset?
Why can't you answer that question? Do you genuinely think that men can have babies?
Why are you so upset by the way other people lead their lives?
No, people can lead their lives any way they want, but men can't have babies.
But are you dictating the English language now?
No, I know. I just want the English language correctly used.
Oh yeah, well that's fine. You can use
yes, I do. I feel very strongly about. There is not a single man in this country, and he can call himself Sheila if he wants to. He can put a dress on if he wants to. He can cut his todger off if he wants to. But he does not at any point ever need a baby on board badge because he's a man and he can't get pregnant and he can't have a baby. Do you accept that?
I find it fascinating because nobody's calling you a man.
What's that got to do? Sorry.
Well, why are you so upset about it? Why are you so triggered by all this? Why is it
I'm not
so
triggered.
annoying
Triggered is a patronising word, Andrew, because I'm a woman and women are having their identity and their existence completely and utterly obliterated by the idea that a man on a Tuesday afternoon can think he's a woman and claim to be a woman, and we all have to pretend that is so.
I don't think that's factually correct, because if you talk to any trans person, they've known they've been in their adopted
Well, then they'll know that they're a woman or they'll know they're a man, won't they?
They were children, since they were aware of their own existence.
If they accept that they're trans, then they'll know what